Subscribe to WROK on YouTube and never miss a meeting.
Special meeting budget work session for the 24th of April, 2023. We'll begin with the approval of the agenda. We have an agenda in front of us today, which consists of 3 additional items. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? A motion by Commissioner Hunt. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Colo. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. This brings us to item 3. Which is review of recommended budget for the fiscal year 2023-2024, session 1. Director Lichtenberg, the floor is yours.
How are you? Thank you. I'm trying to deal with technical difficulties here, so just one moment, please bear with me. We have enough technology in the room. We just
I feel like I know.
This looks like a Kyle.
My tinfoil hat.
Oh, we could watch all the games too.
Exactly. Okay.
Kyle was like, how wide is the wall in my bathroom? 75 inches? We can do it.
Well, while she's starting on that, let me make a few introductory comments. I wanted to thank Deb and her staff. We're a month early in comparison to previous budget processes. Really excited here. Additionally, truly like to commend our staff is not only do we have the paper copy, but also now with the OpenGov platform, as it'll be a little bit more simplified next year because we'll be switching everything over to OpenGov. That doesn't mean that paper is entirely going away, but I think it will better convey the policy message to bring this information down, the complex financial information to a non-financial user, a better understanding and better tracking of the goals. So there are many other benefits associated with it, but I also wanted to kind of lay the groundwork. So this is new territory for us. So kind of bear with us on the technology, and we're going to try to make this work.
I'm not exactly sure what we have going on, but you know what? We're going to just go with it. So hold on 1 second. I switched the input. There we go. All right. When it doesn't work the first time, you just keep rolling. So thank you, everyone. I'm glad that we have gotten to this point. This has been a classic case of building the airplane while we were flying it. Not only is it my first run through the budget, we were implementing the OpenGov software, which has a lot of different components to it. Not the least of which is the story aspect of it. And I don't know if you have been able to take a cruise through the online version. This is what you see when you go to our website. I am going to, if I can switch over to that on the screen. Share. We're going to just talk through it. I had everything working perfectly up until I hit the record button. So we were all good. But anyhow, if you go on the city's website, you go to the budget page, you will land on the main budget page here. It is completely interactive, and it takes you through all of the information that is contained in the PDF, but it allows you to do it on more of a bite-sized piece, so to speak. We've got the floating bar up at the top that can take you to each of the different sections and take you back very easily. So one part of this program is basically building a website for the budget. In addition, there are all of the tools that come with it, which will allow us to have much more robust forecasting, workforce planning tools. Transparency features are wonderful as well. So we're thrilled to have this. So in front of you, I've given you each a hard copy of the budget PDF, which is the bound copy, and you also have a binder. So within the binder is the PowerPoint that I'm going through. So if you want to make any notes as we go through, feel free to do that. And there are some other supplemental documents in here that we'll kind of touch on as we get there. All right. So basically, again, this is my first spin through the budget here. My approach with these work sessions is typically to interpret what is in the book. It's not just to flip through the pages of the book, but to give the higher level description to help you understand how all of the pieces of the budget fit together. So we'll be looking at this, focusing on the high impact items, the things that we really see as the topics that we want to cover more in depth as we go forward. We'll look at some of the historical perspectives, how we're trending for the future, and we will just kind of keep going through. I'll keep track of any questions that come up, and we will respond to those so that we can keep everything moving. All right, here we go. So I described the new budget platform to you. Again, I think that the online version is the most robust way of looking at the budget. I still like to have paper myself, so paper won't completely go away, but this is what we have gravitated towards, and I hope you find it useful as well. So getting into the budget overview, we're going to start with Paul. We're going to touch on the transmittal letter, which is the part of the document that Paul puts together, summarizing where we're headed, and then we'll move into other things after that.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'm not going to cover the entire letter, but I think what is important is the guiding philosophy or goal that was used in putting together the overall plan. And this is outlined in the bullet points before you. So first is advancing high priorities. And what I mean by that is that we've spent a lot of time, energy, and effort in the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, as well as Aging in Place, and as well as the Human Rights Ordinance and the subsequent formation of that commission. And in order to do that, there is a certain amount of capacity in order to effectively carry that out. So these are the present overarching goals that we hope to achieve through the implementation of this budget. Next is the commitment to reliable infrastructure, as we've discussed extensively through the ARPA presentation, the investments that we're making, capital improvements above and below the ground, and we'll see how that improves our community services. Along those lines is a nice segue into build and enhance community amenities. And as we're looking at combining ARPA funds with other funds to make the improvements, and the examples out there is the improvements to the senior center, as well as constructing a new public restroom facility, animal shelter, and also the feasibility of joining with the YMCA to help bring about a community recreation center. So As we convey this information, enhance communications, this is a critical part of that. How do we relay the information in a meaningful way? As I said in the beginning, how do you translate that complex financial issues to a non-financial user so that they can understand what are the things that we're trying to accomplish? And this is an important part of it. So, last but not least, but I would be remiss if I did not bring up really looking at the long view. As I've mentioned before, not only in the immediate year, but what sort of impact does that make into future years? We will be heading for challenging times. And through such tools like this, going through additional budget exercises than anticipated to future years, I think will put us in a better position of making some good, solid decisions, but not disrupting the quality of services that we provide to the community. So, again, a broad overview of the approach that I took and working with Deb, and I think this will be conveyed and as we drill down into the specific sort of items that are included in the spending plan. So that concludes my remarks on this slide. So.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of those pieces that Paul mentioned, communication and being able to improve the message that we are able to send out to the non-financial users. One of the things that we are working on building is a budget and brief, which will be coming a little bit later in the process. It's a short summary document that summarizes the budget at a high level, kind of hits on the things that are important to our residents. And it's just a supplemental tool that'll go along with the whole big budget book, and I'll be giving that to you later in the process.
Deb, will that have an FAQ with it as well? Because one of the things that I see folks, they go to the budget, and if we're going to have a little section like this, which I think is great, maybe like top 10 FAQs, we get like, okay, I don't understand, why new homes are going up and, shouldn't you guys be flush with money? And it's like helpful to explain like how the Headley Amendment works versus in previous budgets, we just put it in there and it would take a skilled person to pull it out and understand it. But
yes.
If it was like dumbed down in a way like something that MML has or something that says, hey, cities can't do certain things.
Right. And those are exactly the things that we'll be looking to put in there. Again, it's going to be high level infographics and hitting on the things that we want to convey. And those messages will change from year to year based on what our priorities are.
Sure.
But, not everybody likes to read 500 pages of a budget to pull out the important things.
Yeah.
And the goal of a budget and brief is to put spotlight on things that either we're getting a lot of questions on, that we feel is relevant to educate the public on, or things that we're proud of, things that we want to, I always like to look at it as we're conveying the value of what we do, not just the cost of it. And that budget and brief is that tool for what is the value that we bring to the community. And that's what we'll be focused on.
Not to go down that rabbit hole too far, I think another really important, just at a glance, bit of information for residents is how much of my tax dollar goes to the city.
Yeah.
Yes.
Folks often think about their entire tax bill as being in city coffers when it's a fraction of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah, for some people, I'm like, you're getting a heck of a value for $500 a year.
Right.
You're getting ambulatory, police, 52 parks, all these.
It is, it's amazing the things that people interpret when they look at their tax bill, and you're absolutely right. The city portion is this. And one of the things, I didn't get a chance to put it in here, but I often use the graphic of a dollar bill. And, this portion of the dollar bill is the cities, and this portion is the school, and this is the county, and everything else. And then take this piece and put it into the the pennies and the quarters and the nickels of, you know, we spend this much on public safety and this much on capital and that. So your point is well taken. I think it's a very important thing, because when people pay their taxes, they write that check out to the city of Royal Oak, not to the school district and the county, and it's easy for that to get lost. So absolutely, I agree 100%. So starting at the what's new, this budget does include 11 new full-time positions, which we will look at in detail a little bit later. It includes over $28 million for investment in the city's infrastructure, parks, buildings, water and sewer, roads. It's a very robust capital program. And then the other thing that we did, based on things that we heard coming from the commission, and just our focus on, we do a variety of different studies and plans, and we want to see those come to life. So we really have made a point of tying what this budget is funding to the strategic plan, to the SCAP. How is this budget enabling us to carry out those goals? So one of the examples of that is in the CIP itself, which is the capital improvement plan. When this went to the Planning Commission originally in February, we presented this pie chart with it, which we identified for each of the projects included in the capital improvement plan, what would be the primary strategic goal that it is focusing on. And based on the nature of capital projects, the majority of them are based on the reliable infrastructure goal, strengthening our roads, our water and sewer. But there's a variety of other topics that were touched on. Now, any of these items could have multiple touch points with strategic goals, but we just focused on the primary goal, and this is our starting point. We'll be nuancing this as we move forward, but it's our first step into that arena of really pulling all of those documents together to make sure that we're spending money where we should be, based on what this commission has established as its strategic goals. One thing that I want to point out is when the CIP went to the Planning Commission, there was $33 million, a little over $33 million in the current year for the budget for 23-24. Based on the funding that was available, some of those projects have been smoothed out, and the amount that's included in the budget for 23-24 to actually be funded is $28.5 million. All of the projects remain in the capital improvement plan, but they've been spread out so that we have a more balanced approach to accomplishing those capital items.
Before you get too far, Commissioner Cole had a question.
Thanks. So I guess just a question with the CIP in general, when it's being presented, and maybe this could be answered offline too, but, you know, looking at, like, you know, I don't know why the Planning Commission is, like, looking at information technology. Is that just something we throw into it? Is there a regulation of what needs to go in it, and do we add above and beyond, just so it's comprehensive of one spot?
So we include everything that is over a threshold of $5,000. That's what we consider to be capital items that are going to be capitalized.
Yeah.
Now, are those items as pertinent to the Planning Commission? No. The Planning Commission is focused primarily on the infrastructure and development of facilities and those types of things.
Yeah.
making sure that they comply with the master plan. That's their primary role.
So then I guess the question is, do we lead the process, the city leads the process with developing the CIP then, and I'm assuming the planning commissioner blesses it?
So the role of the planning commission is to ensure that any of the projects that relate to the master plan comply with the master plan, that they don't stray from what that says. The actual funding, the decision as to what makes it to the finish line lies with this body. Planning commission does not fund. The planning commission recommends based on their knowledge of the plan.
But do we, the city, give the planning commission, like, this is what we would like to do? What do you think? 'Cause I'm assuming that's how it goes.
Administration and department heads, yes, absolutely. Yes.
I'm trying to, this reflects our priorities that we've set out.
Yeah, I think we're saying you don't want to have a disconnect. Obviously, the planning commission's here, and then we're here on a financial priority, right?
Yeah.
But I think Tim does a good job teeing that up and, redirecting as best as possible when those discussions occur.
I try to watch those planning meetings, but some of those are just as long as ours, so.
I know.
But yes, at the heart of it, it all starts in the department
Okay.
and then progresses along. One of the things that I felt we needed to be a little bit more transparent on is what goes into building our future year forecast. So beyond just the budget year that we're looking at, we provide a look going out 5 years. And I don't see where we have put those assumptions out there. Obviously, when you're forecasting, you're pulling assumptions and you are basing it on something. The key is to share what those are. So if somebody says, wait a minute, interest rates they're going to double. So just saying that they're going up 1% isn't enough. Or, I think electricity, instead of going up 8%, is going up 18%. That would be better. So this, and within your binder, and it is also in the PDF on page 35 to 39, we talk more about those specific items that are included in forecasting so that you can see exactly what we use to build those forecast years.
Are these?
The PDF page is what?
35 through 39.
Okay.
And it is also in tab 4 in your binder.
So previously, the budget director, let's say we were going to redo Main Street, she would assume we're redoing Main Street every year that she projects, and it'd be
Straight line.
same, $2 million expense over and over and over again, right? Which is not how it happens.
That is not how it happens, and that is not how these forecasts are built.
Yeah, and also
So-
the flat line out the revenues too. So assuming no increases at all, so it's a much more dramatic sort of change, so.
Right. I try to look at this from what I hope that reality will be, not pie in the sky, not doom and gloom, but based on what we know today, what is a reasonable scenario going out so that we can use our dollars robustly and, we
We
don't.
steer the ship sooner as opposed to later if we start to see we're going off course. Or if we're, our forecasts are off to the better, then we can decide, okay, can we continue to reinvest in other priorities or, pull some things forward or do whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If your forecast is too conservative, you're not doing enough for the community. If it's too aggressive, you're going to be short on cash when you get down the road. So there's a balance. Farther out in the forecast you go, more likely it is that something's going to change. And that's the beauty of forecasting. If you see something out here that you don't like, we can start working on it today. and that's where we're at. But I did want to provide you with that picture of what is used to build it.
There's one more thing on this
Yeah.
forecast here.
Sure, you can ask about these.
So we got this year at 33, next year at 32 million, then drop to 24. Then it's in 19s and 18s. Is that COVID dollars really causing that boost in the near term?
So
Not COVID dollars,
again,
ARPA dollars.
what's on this slide is a snapshot from what went to the Planning Commission.
Mhm.
The final numbers that are in the budget are smoothed a bit more. These numbers that you're looking at here, when originally presented by the Recreation Department in particular, had a lot of projects early in the budget. So we smoothed it, and there is a reconciliation between what this is and how we moved those out on the finance end of things. Some of it is ARPA, but a lot of it is just getting those projects slotted in to align with the road millage money coming in and other factors. One thing I did want to point out is that you had mentioned the $2 million project being repeated. What is, I believe, a little bit of a departure from how we've done things is information that's included in the CIP is included in the forecast. In the past, there were projects that were included, especially for parks,
They go there to die.
that were not funded or not planned for funding. So when we get into some of the details, you will see that there's hefty investments included in the forecast for parks, because I want you to see what that looks like. If we actually are committed to completing some of those projects, it's in the forecast and you can see how that's going to impact things. And if we feel like that is too aggressive, or we need to seek out additional funding sources because those are priorities, it allows us to see that. So what you see in the final CIP spread, which is in the book, is what is included in the forecast. It lines up.
Yeah, can I ask a question about the next slide that you're on previously?
This one?
Yes. 2 months, a month and a half ago, we had a discussion about healthcare and ways to reduce that cost, so
Yes.
substantially,
Yes.
actually. So if I recall, it's going down around 50%. Why are we, like, how do we get to a 5% increase?
Because regular health care for active employees is potentially going up substantially more than that. So that is
it's not offset enough by the retiree?
No.
No.
No, the savings that we are looking at from that will allow us to continue the insurance at the levels that we have. It's one of those forks in the road that we see what's coming. We know how those costs have been increasing. We are looking for a way to maintain what we have. And it's not, that change is going to allow us to maintain it rather than have a windfall. So again, I just want to touch on things that we'll be talking about a little bit more as we progress on, but these are the things that we see as being key points within the budget, within the city's operations, that we need to pay attention to, we need to focus on, and they will drive the rest of the budget and how our operations continue. It's no secret that the parking issues have been discussed. We'll be continuing that discussion and focusing on the bond covenants related to the debt that's outstanding, the impact of the MPS contract, and the future of the older parking structures. So we're not going to be making significant changes to any of this in the budget itself, but these will be topics that we will need to be continuing to focus on in the months to come. Water and sewer rates and the health of the fund. Right now, our rates are almost completely variable and dependent on the customer's usage. The city costs are not. City costs are largely fixed. So much of the risk falls on the city. If it's a very wet summer and we don't sell a lot of water for irrigation, we are falling short on meeting a lot of our fixed obligations. So this will be something that we discuss further, looking at how our current rates are structured and how we may want to move forward. Property tax millages, we're fortunate this year. We actually do not have a Headley rollback. So our millages did not have to decrease because of that. But we are, for the first time ever, capped at that 5% that Prop A says you can't go above that. With the inflation factors, and, you know, again, here's the healthcare costs being an issue.
It seems counter. I think most people would be really frustrated that if everything's going up in cost, like why we have to cap everything at 5%. If there's people that are coming in, moving in, buying big homes and willing to pay, you know, but the bill for tax, you know, doesn't necessarily affect all of your Prop A protected properties, but just, you know, to explain to people, inflation's outpacing our costs too.
Right, and we'll look at a few slides further in to see how some of those rules around property taxes actually look when you apply them to a real case scenario. Park improvements, again, is one of the significant items that's been added into these forecasts. Again, that wish list is significant. And, you know, parks are an amenity that is important to every community, and they're very important here. So we want to spend some time focused on how we make that happen. We want to look at certain operations that we have within the recreation to make sure that we are using resources as well as we can be. A couple of those examples are the golf course and the ice arena. And we have some management contracts related to some of those that that need to be looked at again. So those are on our radar screen. And again, health insurance, we've already mentioned it, but it is something that we stay very focused on.
I have a question. Maybe this is not the place for it, and just say, no, we'll address this later. But what are we going to do about our construction code balance?
We'll be discussing that later.
Okay, thank you.
And you are right. That is one thing that continues to have a very, very high fund balance. And we will be looking at some items with that. Yeah.
Just one more question while we're talking about parks again and the wish list. Do you know, and maybe Paul might know too, did this CIP take into account the new Parks and Rec master plan for coming up with the wish list, or was this stuff, because there's been a lot of stuff in the CIP that's kind of been hanging out in a couple of years. So is this what the Parks and Rec master plan predicts we need to do? Because I don't think they gave us a funding amount on any of those improvements.
No, so these were all projects that were submitted by Recreation and Public Services. So I can't speak to how closely they align with the Parks Master Plan, but I know that it has been discussed at that level.
Yeah, I don't know. For one thing, that master plan was not very specific on, spend this dollar in the first year and so on. But the projects that are included in there, you could point back to the master plan to back that up. So did it alter the list? I don't believe so. It probably was things that was already in the pipeline, but it was things that we knew of older facilities and things like that. But the plan would back up that to provide the justification.
I'm only wondering because it would be, like, it's nice to see that there was a forecast that includes CIP and like what we're going to shift to do it. But I would also wonder what we have said we want to do and what's not being included, right? Like what Parks Master Plan is not being funded or has not made it to here yet. I think that might be.
There's a long list of things that
I'm
are
sure,
not
right?
included.
Like,
Yeah.
And I think that's a question, when it comes to budgeting, that we might want to know.
And as we wrap in more and more of those plans, we'll be able to report out to you on more and more of that. For this round, we really focused on those strategic goals, the SCAP, and bringing in what we could. Again, building the airplane as we fly it. But you're absolutely right. There's a reason that we do those studies and have those plans in place. We want to make sure that we have touch points where we come back and reflect on how we're doing in alignment with that.
Thank you.
So I did want to point out that the orange boxes are gone. That used to be the highlights of things that have changed, but the significant program notes still exist within the budget. You'll find those in each section. They're more readable bullet points now. One thing that I did provide you with in tab 6 is a summary of those significant items, just all combined in one document. So you don't have to flip through all the pages. You can scan that document to kind of see what's new or different. So getting into some of the numbers, we want to start with looking at the general fund. One thing that I want to point out is I like to show revenue as actual revenue, expenditures is what we intend to spend, and then the use of fund balance shown separately. So you can see at a glance if we have a shortfall or if we have a planned use of that fund balance. So in this case, this budget is built assuming that there will be a use of fund balance of just under $3 million. This is just the general fund on its own. It's very interesting. Sometimes I think a picture points, shows you things that you don't just see when you look at the numbers. But the taxes here are very similar to the transfers out. And you're all well aware that the most significant transfer out is to the public safety fund. So really to consider the general fund or the public safety fund alone doesn't tell the whole story. So looking at them combined is the next slide. So in the budget for 23-24 is included a transfer of $23 million from the general fund to the public safety fund. This slide has that $23 million eliminated. So we're able to see a little bit more clearly when you combine those. Now this is more balanced and more of what you would expect to see in a municipal setting where personnel costs are the majority of the cost because we primarily deal in people. We provide services, and that is reflected in the personnel costs. The tax portion is not covering the full amount of those personnel costs. And again, those personnel costs are wages, all the benefits, retirement, anything else that's accrued. So very high level summary. And again, this combined total is $65 million of expenditures. When we look at this going out into the forecast, we are not looking at that trend changing. We are continuing to see expenditures outpacing revenue. And on a combined basis in the forecast, we would be looking at a use of almost $30 million of fund balance. So again, this is one of those items where, you know, we're looking at this in the forecast. If we use different assumptions, could this change? Yes, absolutely. But we feel that this is a reasonable representation of how things are headed.
Is it fair to say that, like, when you show that one slide, it shows a lot of the costs are going up 8%, all of that, that really our revenue projections just can't keep up with it because of the way the tax code works in the state of Michigan?
Exactly. Exactly. And when you look at it, 64% of this combined revenue is taxes. We are dependent on the tax structure. And we'll get into a few of the things that are impacting that as we go on.
A question.
Yes.
On both of these slides, you show transfers, I'm assuming, into revenue and then transfers out of expenditures. In terms of the public safety area, what would some of those examples be like of the transfers out?
Most of those are related to the general fund. It is primarily, the transfers in are largely from the DDA. There's contributions for some of the debt service payments and other factors. That's the majority of that. And the transfers out are primarily to funds other than public safety from the general fund.
Okay.
So the next level of grouping of funds that we look at is the general fund and all of the special revenue funds. So when you actually are looking at the budget resolution and you are making your motions, this is the level that you are adopting the budgets for. We do not formally adopt budgets for debt service funds, capital project fund, enterprise, or internal service fund. That is our policy. So we still budget every bit as diligently in those funds, but the actual appropriation is just the general fund and the special revenue fund, which represents almost $140 million of our total expenditures. This slide is a little different from the previous slide with the general fund and public safety fund. It does not have those inter-fund transfers eliminated. Hi there.
Hi.
When you look at it at this level, we're a little bit closer on the funding in terms of revenue matching up with the expenditures. The PowerPoint is in tab 2. And we're on slide 19. The one thing that I do want to point out, because there's a significant change from where we currently are projected here, this $32 million, that does include the $28 million for ARPA. So that is a blip there. When you exclude ARPA, overall, we're looking at a use of a little over $18 million in the forecast period.
So question on that. The difference between that 9 and 18, when you say exclude ARPA, do you also take out the project?
I'm only pointing that out so that you can understand the impact that ARPA has had. So no, we did not take out the additional spending. So if we were to do all the projects that we do, that we have planned.
Including the ARPA project.
Including the ARPA project.
Yeah.
That would be, if we were doing the projects regardless of whether we had ARPA.
Yeah.
That would be the impact, which is why I showed it.
Which some probably we just simply wouldn't, right? Like we're spending $24 million because we had it.
Absolutely.
Okay, right.
You are 100% correct.
So that $9 million positive is more reflective of where we actually stand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Assuming that we would do none of the ARPA projects if we didn't have the ARPA money.
Does the debt service under expenditures, so that includes the debt that we owe for where we bonded out for the previous pension system, correct?
Yes.
But that does not include our mandatory payments toward the current pension system that we make to that system. Would that be under personnel, or would that be?
That's under personnel.
Okay.
And it's only a portion of the debt service because some of that will be in some of the enterprise funds and internal service funds as well. So looking at the overall picture with everything combined in, including those enterprise funds and internal service funds, our total expenditures for the city is over almost $242 million. So looking at projected fund balances, so we have fund balance policies on a few of the funds. General fund, our target is to be within 10 to 25% of budgeted expenditures. For the non-major enterprise funds and the auto parking enterprise funds, our policies just restrict the amount of transfers that can go out of those funds to the general fund. We do not currently have anything that would impact at that level. And then the state construction code, our goal is to be not less than 50%. We are substantially above 50%.
So should that read the other way around? Our goal is shall be not less than 50%.
Correct. So by the strict definition here, we're in line with our policy because we are above 50%.
Yeah, because I think of the issue and I'm like, well, we're well over 50%. We should probably reduce that. Okay.
So 50%, I believe that the intent of this is that we want to be about 50%.
Yeah, because if you have a down year or whatever, you want to continue to fund staff to do.
Correct.
You know, there's less building inspections. It's not a variable expense. It's a fixed expense.
Correct.
Okay. Just when I read that, I'm like, conflating it with the issue we have.
Yes. So when we look at the general fund alone, we are in compliance with the 10 to 25% policy through the current year and the budget year for 23-24. We would project to end 24 with 17.1%. But at this current rate, we would be the next year out at 5.1%. Now again, remember, included in those numbers is all of that capital project money that is in the CIP related to parks. So when you look at the bottom half of this slide, I looked at the, starting at the same point, that unassigned fund balance, and then the next line down is the capital outlay that is included in the budget and the forecast. that's hitting the general fund and backed that out and said, so if we did not fund those, where would we be? So that gives us another year, almost 2 years. We would end up 25, 26 at 9.7% if we did not do those projects, assuming that we didn't find some other funding source to help us do those. So does this mean that this is where we're going to be? No. Again, this is based on a certain set of assumptions. But does it alert us that we need to be focused on where we're going and it may be time to make some adjustments? Yes. Similarly to what we previously discussed, the general fund alone or the public safety fund alone doesn't tell the whole story. This slide combines those two, eliminates those interfund transfers. So when we're looking at the expenditure amount, it does not have that transfer in there. And we're largely in the same position. A little bit, basically we hit the 10% mark at about the same time.
So, I guess the question I have is, I mean, we can't operate with money we don't have, right? So when looking at this, you know, this is good for now. Is there a projection that shows if we were to take out items, how we can maintain that 10% also?
So we do not have that alternate scenario right now, other than taking out the capital, which is generally the first thing that you're going to see.
You're going to delay those projects.
Right.
Or the ones that can be delayed. Some of them might not be able to.
Correct. Correct. What, as we looked at in the earlier slides, the big component, the biggest, over 60% is personnel. So, included, you know, some of the questions are, well, we projected to be in a worse place, but we're better than that now that we've gotten a year further down the road. There may have been vacant positions that weren't filled. So one of the items with state construction code is there are vacant positions that are not filled. So those are expenditures that have not been made, which keeps that fund balance growing. So there are a number of different scenarios that we can look at.
Mm-hmm.
This is based on operations as they are today, combined with the additional items that we talked about for the budget.
Do all these projections assume approval of the 11 new recommended FTEs at about $1 million a year?
Yes, and we'll actually get there. There's a slide that costs out those positions. State construction code, yes. One of the things, Paul, maybe you can speak to community development. Are we looking at a review of?
That is on tonight's agenda.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So I'll be speaking to that. So we'll save that. That's an action item, and I'll speak in depth about that. So.
But in brief, these funds can be spent on something other than building inspections?
It would have to be related to the functions of that service, and we'd have to go back to state code, what would be allowable expenditures. So, you know, could we pay police and fire out of this? Probably not.
No.
But it would have to be specifically something that would relate to building safety, to inspections, support services.
Do we pay all of our inspectors out of this though? Do we pay all inspectors, all their cars, all their offices, all their? lunches?
We do, and-
We charge back a portion of my salary.
And mine as well.
And Paul's.
Mhm.
You know, we do an administrative overhead charge,
Sure.
technology charges, motor pool, if they've got vehicles that they're using out in the field. These are fully loaded costs.
So last year, the mayor asked of CRM to be made. Did they ever make that out of this fund? We passed that at budget time. Did you know if they ever?
I'm sorry.
The mayor asked for technology, our customer relationship management program to be made out of this fund. Paul, do you know if that's done?
Yeah, so I'll be talking about that. So the purchase here, that's we need to review the development process and what sort of technology recommendations that will come out of it. I don't want to buy something unless we have a pretty firm handle of, you know, what is it going to be measuring. So what I'm suggesting is that we need to get to the fundamentals and to look at the entire process. What is technology that can help, you know, customer service, to improve timeframes, things like that. Then that will drive what the specifications are to such a software.
Am I correct in my knowledge that we are not doing fire inspections at the rate that we should?
There is.
And the second part of my question is,
okay.
could we load those up, do them, you know, and cure our backlog out of this fund?
So there are some expenses that are related to fire, related to building safety. And so the fire chief has asked for additional fire inspectors. That was approved in last year's budget. And the portion related to that is coming out of the construction code fund.
Okay.
So then, I mean, it's increasing over the years. How is it getting so high? So
it's a combination of some significant building projects that have significant building permit fees attached to them.
Yep.
It is positions that have not been filled that we have budgeted for. So they're funded, but we don't have bodies, so that money is not being spent. So it's a combination of higher revenue and lower expenditures.
So you get any surplus.
Exactly.
But I guess the question, like, are we not, the positions aren't filled, is it because we're not funding them enough, or are we not attracting the talent that we need in a fund that we have to attract it with?
It's called graying of the workforce. You have very few people that go into that, and especially since construction is so robust, it's probably better for someone financially, personally, to stay in the trades than to go into inspections. When the construction dries up, that's when a lot of people, they switch over to inspections. But it's hard to get, especially like electrical or plumbing and mechanical and folks like that, when they can be far, far higher. So say, for instance, all right, let's just double their wages. Well, then you cause a ripple effect on the workforce. When you have other employees that are not working in the trades going, hey, why are you giving that person a 50% increase when, you know, our jobs seem similar? And so you know what I mean? So it's just that.
Then what do you do when times are low and the market changes? And one, you have to give everyone a raise, all your building inspectors. If you double the pay for the new recruit, you got to give it to everybody.
Correct.
And then when times go down and there's you know, it's not easy to mess with people's pay like that.
Yeah.
Then I wonder if the solution is to, I mean, you look for external.
Well, I think that's what Paul's going to have on the next agenda.
So
say, let's figure out what we're doing wrong.
We'll cover this under the agenda.
I mean, maybe we need.
These are good questions.
Yeah, we don't want to. Maybe there's things we can do to make it more efficient.
Yeah.
That's sure, Paul.
All right, so getting into the position budgeting. So this shows our history of staffing levels. I put 2003, 2004 on here as that was the high watermark since the year 2000. So I just put it in as a point of reference. A lot has changed since then, so it's important to note that the recreation numbers have changed because a number of our services have been contracted out. So the farmer's market, the ice arena, golf course, all of those are contract where we used to have those in-house. And then the court obviously combined, I believe in 2015. So that accounts for some of that change in staffing. But basically between the current year that we're in and what is requested in the budget, there are 11 additional positions. So the next slide shows what the impact on the budget is.
Real quick with these positions, when I look at some of these, this is for everything combined. I mean, the district court funds its positions through its fines and, you know, yeah, it all fits in, but the reality is they're collecting more fines to deal with more work. So it's not necessarily a taxpayer direct contribution. It's two courts combined, a lot more activity. You know, we have indigent, I can never say the word right, you know.
Indigent.
Yeah, things going on and more people are getting their share, their time in court. And I'd also say with the library too, they have their own millage. And so they run their own budget. So if they have some sort of catastrophic windfall, then they manage their HR and labor situation accordingly. So then the remaining are really kind of our general fund, public safety fund, which I think is 6, not quite 11.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely correct.
Wait. Which 5 did you subtract? The district court, 3.
And the library.
Library, 2. Okay.
So this summary slide just has a very brief description of what the stated need is for those positions, why they're being requested, and then the budgeted costs that would go along. So this is the amount that is included in the budget as it's been presented to you in 23-24.
Does this include the cost of the employee? So is it salary or is it salary plus benefits? And
This is fully loaded.
Right.
This is everything, benefits.
Start
Payroll
saying earned
taxes.
health care, not a benefit to.
The proposed
Survive.
recreation directors of this of mid-year funding. So full year, you double that cost.
And this also doesn't account for the fact that at any given time, the budget doesn't count for ongoing vacancies, correct? Like we assume like in the police department that all 79 sworn officers are going to be hired, but we know that at any given time it's,
We're going to
you got 2 out, 3 out, so you're just kind of always floating.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. We fund all approved positions. In some cases, such as the last item, recreation director, we have that in there for 6 months because we're anticipating that would start in January of 2024. But otherwise, you are correct. There is some cushion for those changes, but the other thing that cushion accounts for is when employees leave, they leave with exit pay, which is their accumulated, a portion of their accumulated leave time can be paid out.
Yeah.
And so it balances out.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question to Mike's, the mayor's point really quick? The court though it's not self-funding, right? We don't bring in enough fees to pay for, like, we fund it out of the general fund because the court can't bring it up.
It's part of the general fund, so it is, you're correct, it is not fully supported
Yeah.
by just the fines and fees.
They're
more to
offset,
it.
but they're
Yes,
not.
absolutely.
But when you're looking for incremental positions, it's usually tied to more work that's tied to
Yeah.
fines and fees and penalties and stuff.
But then I don't know, is this the time to talk about these specific positions? Do you want to talk about them at the cost centers?
We can certainly pause to talk about them now if you'd like, whatever the will of the group is.
Sounds like a good idea.
So I just asked, like, with the court, 2 clerks, to deal with the parking system? I mean, we just entered into a robust negotiation to decrease the tickets by 85%, right? That was the goal.
Yeah.
Has that been considered?
So I had a conversation with Derek, Judge Meineke, and I said, well, hey, we're making some changes, and, I've taken a personal assignment here to look at some of the data and see what we can do for the UI and SLA. And I said, hey, I know if you plan on hiring a couple more folks, we're going to have a reduction in tickets and stuff. But his explanation was very, it's not just that. There's a lot of activity. You see here, like drug court, caseload in drug court, and all of that. So he said these folks they're working. They're doing an amazing job right now. They're going above and beyond the call of duty. So some of this is even just to, level set the existing work that's going on right now.
Which would make sense with the probation officers. Is that the clerks also? Because the transmittal needs to let the clerks sort of deal with MPS.
Yeah, I mean, I don't administer the court. Tammy Bonet would have that answer, but just to tell you what I know, my understanding is it's not just with tickets. He said he could hire even more, but they acknowledge that we will see a reduction in parking tickets, but a lot of it is other activity in the court they have to manage.
I guess that'd be the only question I'd want to ask them before moving on with that one.
Go in front of the man with the black robe and ask him anything you want, but I trust him. I know. I sat down with Ms. Bonet for a couple hours weeks ago.
I mean, well, just following along on that, I mean, the part that sort of sticks in your craw is that this is two more people there for MPS, and then we have a parking system manager because of higher service needs with MPS, so we're negotiating with them, and it seems like we're not getting any bargain. I'll just say that. And now we are adding 3 people, even if it's not entirely for MPS. It's just the scale keeps tipping and tipping and tipping, and I mean, the outlay that we're having for the system, somewhere there's got to be some balancing of it, and it feels like.
Yeah, we'll recognize that the negotiations continue with MPS, right? So these are things that, we have to acknowledge in those discussions with them. We have a change right now that went into place to offer immediate relief, and I think these are some of the things that I'm pulling together in terms of data and information to understand how that negotiation can be leveraged to explain to them that and Deborah has all the information, when we ultimately settle on what that financial model is going to be.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better because it just feels like up until now we haven't.
And I don't want to say, I don't want to say it this way either because it makes me sick, but we are collecting fines, to process those. So it's, yes, you're hiring 2, but you're also bringing in more revenue from the parking system theoretically too.
But we're actively working to reduce it.
Yes, and as we reduce it, right. But if you have a question, I would maybe Judge Meineke can explain, or Tammy Bonet can explain that my understanding is these folks this is just a indicator. It's not exactly all the work that those clerks will be doing.
Yeah, and I'm just like Commissioner Cole, I'm open to hearing that from them, but I'm glad to hear that you're considering this in your negotiations because it just feels like we're, paying on one hand with the right hand and paying on the left hand, and there's less money coming in and we're paying twice as much. And
there's the direct costs, and then there's a lot of indirect costs we're evaluating.
Okay.
There's also extra effort being done in the PD as well that we're evaluating.
Yeah, along those lines, for the parking manager, for the size of our system, coming from a community that is similar downtown, it surprised me that we had very little staff support in that regard. So is that something that MPS will offset? I doubt it. But
we went with that system because it was automated.
I know, but hear me out, is that absent that, you're never going to have continuity in that area. We're going to be flushing out retirees every 6 months. And my thought is that get someone in that's truly committed as a parking professional that can iron out many of these public relations issues Will it resolve all of them? No, but I'm just telling you from working through the similar parking system, you get what you pay for. If you're going to go cheap, you're going to have even a lousy system.
Right.
So,
And Commissioner Macy, if you want to fix the system, you need somebody focused on it. And if you want to change the system down the road, you need somebody that can usher that change in. What happened with this system, one of the flaws is we had our chief of police working on it as a side project, and the result we got was not great. So I'm not faulting him or anybody. I'm just saying if, you know, I don't necessarily have an issue with this if we want to solve an issue, but that's me.
I'm just saying, we brought this system in, thought we all,
Yes, Melanie, we know we brought it in. We know it's not great.
No more needs to be said on it, but I will just say, the big selling point was that it was automated, and we wouldn't have to have.
Actually, that's the hubris.
Yeah. Yes.
So.
Lots of it, you know, were sold that, you know, turned out to be more problematic than helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. No, you go. No, you go.
Yeah, the management analyst. So you see them helping with the HRC, sustainability, aging in place, and special projects.
Yeah.
How do you see that? Talk a little bit more about that person.
Okay. So going back to my earlier comments of the priority, that we're making a priority of advancing these plans. So the commonality amongst the different initiatives is really community engagement that will involve in a lot of that. Right now, what's lacking in the SCAP, in fact, I had a conversation with one of the EAB board members Saturday morning, where they would like to see is greater engagement with residential properties, because that's the greatest amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Switching over to aging in place, having that same type of approach of greater community engagement to help carry out the plan. So that's why the two are lumped together. All of them add to quality of life. So that is the recommended approach. If the position is not funded, you know, I think it's a matter of being realistic and looking back at the plan and say, when can we truly get these things done? But to have a robust system in place, this is the recommendation that we're making. But that's why you see these kind of seemingly what don't appear to be related, yet they are, of the commonalities of the approach that we use to advance the plan. So.
Okay, thank you.
So.
A related question, a part of that is the Human Rights Commission. I know that when we were considering developing it and deciding, you know, what their role was going to be and what their specific tasks were going to be in general, they had a lot of work to do in terms of their own work, in terms of bylaws and what they were going to do and what they wanted to do and what kind of community outreach they wanted to do and education programs and so on. Do you know how far along they are in that effort? Is this something that is going to need to be funded for the full budget year, or are they really only going to get up and running until like maybe January? And I have no idea.
Yeah, they're heading in that direction. They're just getting into example bylaws of other communities and such. Again, I kind of relayed this to the community I came from that had an HRC that was in existence for better than a decade. I don't see that group needing a full-time FTE just for that function alone, but they do need, you know, someone that can help carry out those sort of programming and things like that. Again, it gets into that community outreach and doing programming, things like that. Those, and this is not meant as that we're listing them in order. Probably the greatest amount of time would be on the SCAP, followed by aging in place, HRC, then other projects. I know you didn't ask that, but I don't want this to give the appearance, because it looks like, well, they're going to primarily work with the Human Rights Organization. When they have time, they'll do these other things. No, I see the SCAP is where we have the greatest need right now.
So was that, with SCAP, there's a economic assistance, wasn't the narrative around bringing them on is that they would focus on the SCAP and making all our economic development climate friendly, and That was like one of the selling points of them, right?
A portion of that, yes.
Yeah.
And so this is, in my view, taking this through several individuals. One of where we make the greatest strides in public facilities is through our DPS director. And to Aaron Filipski's credit is that he's making those changes. But when we look at engaging the community on education, on things that you can do in your homes to be much more energy efficient, and where we can measure an impactful change in greenhouse gas emissions, I think that'll come out as a result of that community engagement part. And that's where I look at this position as being key. So the economic development specialist, so we're talking about in the context as we have the community benefits and we incorporate that in eventually as part of the master plan that relates to subsequent changes into the zoning ordinance. So it's a kind of a narrow, in the scheme of things, you're talking about new commercial buildings coming online, where this, what I envision is really focusing on the existing housing stock in the community, because what's been pointed out on the EAB, that's where the majority of the greenhouse gas emissions is coming from residential properties, not commercial.
Right. Well, and I think too, there's an immense amount of coordination that needs to be done among all the departments as well, from planning, economic development, building, you name it. That effort right now, I don't want to say it doesn't exist, but it's kind of an addition to other people's normal work. So if you're serious about the SCAP, you got to have someone 75% dedicated to it that is coordinating with the planning department, economic development, which I know kind of falls in there, DPS, the police department, fire department. If this really is a plan that permeates and touches every part of our business, you have to fund somebody to do it, to do the work, and to make sure we're getting it done.
So this is another one I struggle with, because I'm with Commissioner Cole. I thought we just funded this position. And so now here it is again that we're saying we need someone for SCAP, and it's a whole other person. And it feels like every budget for the past 2 or 3, we've added 1 or 2 people to the city manager's office. And at first there was a civic center project, and then there was a marijuana, and we were told that there was like kind of a lot of overload in that area. And so we've really, I think, expanded that quite a bit, that office, and adding another person to do something that I thought we just added someone to do this work feels a little bit like, that yes, it would be lovely. I would love to have this person, but looking, if we're seriously concerned about how our budget is looking in the forward years, I know from my very first budget thing that I had the finger wagged at me very much, because we can't add people because personnel is an ongoing cost. And so to have 11 people in this budget that we're adding as at the same time that we're being told, by the way, we have to cut, it does not make sense to me. And this is one of the ones that stood out to me as being the least logical. So I mean, again, I would love to add all these people. I would love to hire lots of people. I'd love to have a robust city where we are providing all these services at the very top level. And I think we're doing that with the staff that we have, with what we can do. And I understand that if we're taking on more projects, we can't do that infinitely. We can't keep on infinitely adding projects and maintaining that same quality of service. But something's got to give. And it just, to me, this 11 it's tough.
So we as a commission have driven some very big policy projects this year, or over the past, 4, 5, 10 years. I mean, we have been insistent on SCAP, Aging in Place, Human Rights Commission. I mean, we have high expectations, and if we're going to drive that, if we're going to see our agendas work, those don't just happen, without humans. I mean, these are some
added humans, many humans.
This is a position that addresses our shared priorities. I mean, we've all voted for these plans, and I just think we need to think hard about how we make sure our plans live, or what we don't do so that we can do this.
I think some else one of those that we've added, we considered that. We took that, let's do this position. And maybe it just, when it comes to this cost center, there's more explanation. Maybe we're just missing something here right now that would explain that, but we thought that we had funded that in the past, I think, is what Commissioner Macy's trying to say.
That's what Mel said.
So maybe what the question is maybe we just, as a follow-up, we go back, we take a look, because also, too, this is today, right? You say, we thought we did that last time. Maybe it worked out that, you know, the people that we hired for economic development as an assistant, maybe that job just demands something different. I don't know the answers. I think it's an okay question, but what I will tell you, where I support, to exactly Commissioner Douglas's points, we have gone out and we have been very ambitious about, you know, doing things and living up to our values. And if you don't have people in place to do it, it's going to be very problematic. I think we need a dedicated person. Now, if that's something that we pull out of existing staff or do whatever, okay, but I think it's important that we understand, you know, maybe with the roles in the office, we can just list like what everyone's working on, I guess, just like a high level to remind everybody that they are working on other existing projects. That way we can see the workload, because at every meeting, every time we do something, and every time we give staff a report, I'm always up there reminding you, like, remember, everything we do, we layer in. Every strategic planning, I say you can't go hard this year because we just gave them plans from last year that'll take 2 years to implement. So if we're at a point where staff is fully booked, I think we need to understand exactly, you know, how everyone's booked up, and then make this decision, you know, a little clearer.
It'd be helpful.
The two other I would touch on, I mean, I agree with what the mayor said. The two other I would touch on would be the DPS position, since like the recreation director, I thought we had one. We have a recreation superintendent. Who deals with all that right now?
So let me talk about that. This was not requested by the DPS director. This is my recommendation to you. Here's the reason why. Because, and if you go back to one of the earlier slides that Deb alluded to, is that we have outside vendors that we're nearing the end of the contract. We need to make some critical decisions on whether or not we continue to provide those services, what we do with those facilities. We're also looking at engaging a potential community center with the YMCA. The other item is that the person that we have does a very good job with athletic leagues. But in terms of a full-service recreation department that gets into senior services, it's not an elevated priority, and nor do they have the capacity. And I'm looking at with the funding that we have now and with the grant dollars that we have coming into the senior center is someone that will take more of a holistic view. So what you're thinking that person is doing, and this is not a workaround, and this is not a promotion. This is a much more comprehensive arrangement that will provide better services to the Parks and Rec, the advisory board, and to meet their needs, and also adding into that cultural amenities of even working with the Commission of the Arts. And so this is a position that I'm presenting to you that exists in like organizations in Oakland County, and because of the changing nature of where we're putting so much funding in those services, in addition to that we're going to have a new animal shelter, and I'm also recommending that the animal shelter is removed from PD and would be under the auspices of this Parks, Rec, and cultural amenities or services as we identified. So,
years ago, we used to have a recreation director, Susan, I can't think of her last name. And when she retired, she was not replaced. But she covered these same areas that Paul has listed here: ice arena, golf courses, parks, including senior services, farmers market, animal shelter, and it seems like there was a whole bunch of other things too. In terms of coordinating also the recreation leagues and all of the other recreation classes and that kind of stuff. I was surprised when I came back that we no longer had a recreation director, because these services are managed fine. We do really well with them, but they're not under a unified person and budget, and so as a result, they're kind of difficult, I think, to coordinate and to make efficient. So I support the addition of a recreation director. I think our city our size, with 51 parks, with the robust, youth services and the youth programs that we've got, I don't know how we have operated this long without one.
Yeah.
I really, really think we need to get one back.
And I'll just say that it also is, an ounce of prevention, because when you have, private vendors coming in and running the golf course or running the ice arena or running the farmer's market, you got to have folks managing those contracts laser focused as part of their responsibility. And when you're worried about, everything that Aaron has, from removing snow, trimming all these things, we've had things come to us last minute related to, we've had unusual things come to us for certain facilities. And I think that having that individual also being a bird dog on our contracts and negotiating great contracts and managing those contracts and auditing those contracts, I think is going to be an important role here too.
Does that sound like a procurement officer in the finance department though?
I would say that, yeah, but I mean, I would say that, in that case, you probably could use somebody to help do contracts, but the reality is there's a difference between purchasing and procurement and actively managing. It'd be the difference between like an engineering group manager and a buyer. The EGM knows the product inside and out and is really the front line.
So this is not one of the, geez, Janice. This is not one of the ones that I targeted. Gavel her down.
Chief.
And part of the reason is because we just passed the millage. Our people just passed the millage, and I think we owe them a higher level of service in Parks and Recreation. And I want to be able to say these are some of the things that we're doing with those dollars that you gave us. I mean, more on that when we get to the Parks and Rec part. But I want to be spending more money in this area because I think that's what we asked the people if they wanted, and they said yes.
That's a really good point.
So I want to be mindful of the time. We are just about to 7:30. So I just want to wrap up this portion just by pointing out, as you're looking ahead on your slides, there were some other positions that were asked for that we said now is not the right time. So that concludes that. We will pick up here on Wednesday. And we'll get into some conversations at the beginning of the meeting on what it means. Really, I'm not an outsider anymore, but having a fresh set of eyes on things, this is an evolving community. Things are changing. Things are, the goals that you have for the city. We're part of this discussion today, and we're going to get into a little deeper of where we're at on the revenue side, because we really can't talk about the expenditure side without first looking at the revenue, because we have to nail that down first and then decide how we're going to divvy it up. It doesn't work the other way. If we start with expenditures, then we're always going to be chasing it. What you have in the binder is my full slide deck for all of our conversations. So feel free to look ahead. Feel free, if you've got questions between now and Wednesday, reach out. And we'll just continue the conversation. I like to know if there are any particular topics that are of interest to you that I haven't mentioned yet, because I want to make sure during these work sessions that you receive all of the information that you need to be able to make good decisions about this budget. So please don't hesitate to reach out if there's something that you need more information on. And then we'll just continue the conversation as we go on.
And I'll kindly ask, how are we doing on time? Did we get what you thought we'd do in an hour and a half?
We got slowed down, but it was okay. I think we had important conversations. Okay. My intent was that we would just kind of talk about these were the positions, but this was good conversation to get into it a little bit deeper now.
So given the timing, I would ask that we all get questions, if we can review at least the rest of the pages here through page 128, this week, and get questions back to Deborah so, she can answer them. And even if you have anything in the next 20 pages before tomorrow, then she can answer them for you individually.
Yeah, I
and try
really
to save
think
a few minutes.
if you go through the binder, the information that's there, that's the extracted information. Yes, Janet?
Are you gonna have public comment?
Yep. So, we're on tomorrow at 6 p.m. Wednesday, 6 p.m. Why did I put it Tuesday on my calendar?
I did Tuesday one on my calendar too.
It's showing up Tuesday, I think, in the webpage.
Tuesday is charter review committee. I just know that.
We gotta check that Romy.gov, make sure.
I think
Maybe
we
it
talked
is.
about it at the table that way. Maybe that's what it was.
No, I thought I pulled it off the calendar today. Okay, so, everybody good?
I will not be here Wednesday.
Okay. One absent? Okay. All right, well, then let's open up public comment. You know the rules.
I know. I just have one. The meeting wasn't in the main room, and by doing Zoom, the only thing that everybody's seeing is that. Nobody at home or on YouTube, so the recording is gonna show any of that deck, the slide deck that you have. Would it be possible for you to post it on?
The slides are gonna be posted,
all of
yes.
these?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Good. Okay, so we'll adjourn, and we'll head over for the regular city commission meeting. I'll allow everyone just a quick few minutes break if they need to use the washroom. Wash.
Hi, I'm Officer Corey Steers, and it's time to test your knowledge of bicycle law. True or false? Green paint in a designated bike lane indicates a point of potential conflict between a car and a bike. True. Green-colored pavement enhances the visibility of a bike lane in places of potential conflict. With increased interest in biking in Royal Oak and across the region, it is everyone's responsibility to keep our streets safe. Know the law.
All right, thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mayor Fournier, and I'm going to call to order our April 24th, 2023 Royal Oak City Commission meeting to order. We are going to begin tonight with an invocation given by Commissioner Hunt, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask that you stand if you can, please.
This past Saturday, Royal Oak hosted the second annual Oakland Earth Day Climate March and Rally. This event, like many held across the globe on Earth Day, was an effort to bring attention to the need for available and affordable green technology for all, as well as the immediate need for bold and positive solutions to our climate crisis. The Earth is our home, and it is our collective responsibility to ensure its health and well-being for future generations. The environment provides us with the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. It's the foundation for our livelihood, our economy, and our community. Our actions have a significant impact on the environment. The way we live our lives, the choices we make, and the products we consume can either help or harm our planet. As members of a local community, we have the unique responsibility to contribute to the broader well-being of the Earth. It is in our own little corner of the world. We can make a broader impact on adopting sustainable practices in our daily lives through recycling and reuse, conserving energy and water, and being an advocate for policies that promote sustainability. While Earth Day has passed, we can still reflect on our relationship with the environment and commit ourselves to make positive changes. By working together and taking responsibility for our actions, we can create a more sustainable future for ourselves and for our generations to come. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunt. All right, that brings us to item 4 on tonight's agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Commissioner DeBuck.
Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of the agenda with the exception of item, where are we? 14, no, 14, yeah.
So your motion is to move forward with the agenda with a elimination of 14? As an agenda
I was
item
going
or
to do this 2
postponement?
separate motions, but the intent is that we need to delay that item given the request from the petitioner. To be brought forward at the next meeting, or do we not?
At a future meeting.
At a future meeting date.
Right, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner DeBuck. Is there a second on that motion? Second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion. Commissioner Douglas?
Do we not have to take action to officially postpone it?
That's what I thought I'd do this too.
But if you set the agenda, then you go to the next item without having the item there. You know what I mean?
No, you still have to address the item as an agenda
Right.
item and just make a motion to postpone it.
Right.
Mr. Liao.
I agree with you, Commissioner Douglas, because this is the time and day for this item for this evening, and to postpone it for a future date, as what Commissioner DeBuck wishes to, or has made a motion to, we'd have to address it separately as well.
Commissioner Perush?
But we don't have to wait until we get there to do that. We could do a motion to postpone to another date right now,
Yes, you can.
after we approve or not approve the motion to approve the agenda.
That is correct.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay, we can do 2 motions. Any other discussion?
Does that work?
Sure, yes.
Okay. All right, any discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. Any other motions? Commissioner DeBuck?
I'll move to postpone item 14 to a future commission date.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion? Commissioner Macy?
I think I missed a memo, so can someone say exactly what's happening?
The petitioner is reconsidering their proposal and has asked for more time before coming back before the commission.
Gotcha.
Any other discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, we have an agenda. And just for those of you who may be here to speak on that agenda topic, we won't be talking about item 14 this evening. We will be talking about it at a future meeting due to the vote here to postpone. So no change in the status. Okay. All right, so we will move on to agenda item number 5. We have a special presentation tonight. I know Director Irwin is here from our library to talk about an incredible volunteer, Victoria Dickinson, as well as being a volunteer. She was passionate about education. And Director Irwin, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Great. Should I use this microphone?
Yeah. Either one. Yeah.
And why don't you all come on up with me? Okay, got our family members here. And this is on? Yes, it is. With me, I have the family of Victoria Dickinson. Today, we are here to recognize her life and contributions. She was raised in Nebraska and attended the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, where she studied pharmacy. Initially, there were 30 men and 2 other women in her class. She graduated in 1946, both first and last in her class. All of the men had been called off to war, and the other women had dropped out. After graduation, she married George South and moved to Detroit, and she was hired as a pharmacist at Hudson's in downtown Detroit. She was only the second woman hired in that department, where she worked for 10 years. 50 years later, she stated in an interview with the University of Nebraska's foundation that discrimination was quite prevalent. After 10 years at Hudson's, she moved to Hutzell Hospital, where she eventually became the assistant director before retiring in 1983. In 1963, she married R.C. Cliff Dickinson, who lived across the street from her in Royal Oak. They had 25 years together before his passing in 1988. In her retirement, volunteerism became the hallmark of her life. She became involved with the Volunteer Service Committee at Beaumont, eventually becoming the president for a number of years, coordinating over 1,000 volunteers during her time there. And she personally accumulated over 8,000 volunteer hours at Beaumont. Another passion of hers was education. That passion was expressed in her volunteer service at the First Presbyterian Church in Royal Oak and at the Royal Oak Public Library. For many years, Ms. Dickinson served on the Board of Trustees of the library and as their president. She served as its president when the library desperately needed to firm up its funding sources, chairing the Village Campaign Committee voter education effort in 2002 and 2003 to get the library's separate mill levy passed. This helped fund a major renovation of the library. She believed that no city was a worthy place for its citizens unless it actively supported its public library and encouraged its citizens to broaden their horizons through the resources of the library. I could not have said that better. Victoria Dickinson's legacy lives on today. Here she is. If you don't know who that woman on your screen is, that is Victoria Dickinson. The millage was just renewed for another 10 years, providing continued stable funding for the library, all due to the efforts of Victoria Dickinson. In addition, she donated $50,000 from her estate to the Royal Oak Public Library. We are procuring a plaque in her memory to hang in the library, recognizing her contributions. Her legacy is more than a financial donation. It is the life that she lived. She was a trailblazer for women in science. She believed in service to her community and demonstrated that throughout her many years as a resident of Royal Oak, volunteering for organizations she was passionate about. She was truly an example for others to follow. We at the library are grateful for her service and for her donation. And some of her family members are here. I'm not sure if they'd like to say anything, but I give you the opportunity to do so.
They're all pointing at me.
Of course.
My name's Scott Bell. I live in Canton, South Dakota, not Ohio, which is a long ways from here. We were long-distance relatives of Aunt Vicki, so we'd hear a lot of things about what was happening in Royal Oak and in Detroit, and she was a cheerleader for this place. She really was. She loved living here. Every time we'd talk or every time we'd visit, we'd get the grand tour about what's going on new in Royal Oak, and she just loved it. Was a definite cheerleader. Royal Oak has lost a valued citizen. She was an amazing lady, and I appreciate the time and thank you for her recognition of her. I really do. Thank you.
I also learned that from my staff today that as the president, she was president so many times that they had to enact term limits. One of our former directors, Carol Windorf, is here celebrating Victoria as well. And I also learned from her family that she was a huge football fan. I'm going to say it in her honor, go Cornhuskers. And she taught them all about football. She knew football like the back of her hand. Yeah. So thank you all so much for allowing us to share the life of a wonderful woman, Victoria Dickinson. Recognition of her is definitely well-deserved. And thank you to her family for coming.
And thank you so much for sharing that wonderful story and for making time out of your schedule to come up here to Royal Oak and talk about your aunt. And thank you for sharing your aunt with us for so many decades. Incredible story, incredible volunteer, and an incredible example for many of us, no matter what stage of life we're in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, this brings us to item 6 tonight, which is public comment. Just a few guidelines about public comment. The City Commission values and relies on the input of our fellow citizens to help make decisions, Now is the time set aside for the public to address the City Commission on any city-related issues, whether they're on the agenda or not. I ask that comments be directed to the City Commission as a whole and not to individual commissioners. If you wish to speak tonight at public comment, please wait until recognized by me, the mayor, then come up to the podium. For the record, you'll state your name and address. Please be mindful, the City Commission wishes to hear from anyone who wants to speak tonight, so comments are limited to 3 minutes or less per speaker, not per topic. There's a timer at the podium to help you keep track of your time. If you don't wish to speak tonight, please don't hesitate to reach out to us via email or other means with your comments. And sometimes it's actually more helpful to get them a couple days ahead of time so we can read them, think about them, research them, etc. Please note that the City Commission will not respond directly to questions during public comment. However, we are taking notes and will address questions when the agenda topic is discussed or refer it to the proper city department if the matter isn't scheduled on the agenda. Our city manager is always taking notes and will look into matters as needed. So with that, who's first? We'll go with Ms. Hennessy in the back.
Thank you. Carol Hennessy, Royal Oak. I'm representing the Royal Oak Memorial Society this evening, and we are inviting you and our citizens to help clean veterans' graves at Oakview Cemetery, and that is located on the east side of Rochester Road between Catalpa and 12 Mile. And it is right next to the Rite Aid. And we will be doing this on Saturday, May the 6th and May the 20th, starting at 10 a.m. You may work as long as you would like, or as short as you would like. Garbage bags will be supplied. Please bring large or small shovels, rakes, racks, rags, water, and weed whackers. Anything you think you will need to clean around the headstones of our veterans. On May the 27th, we will be placing flags on the veterans' graves at 10 a.m. at Oakview Cemetery. The flags will be provided. Please meet inside the cemetery, just past the pond, where we will send you to the different areas, so not everybody's at one area. School groups, scouts, and sports teams are all welcome. And I've already gotten quite a few calls, so I'm looking forward to a big turnout. In the past years, we've been getting over 50 people on each of the cleaning days and over 100 people on placing flags. So that shows that our citizens are for our veterans. And if you have any questions, please call 248-543-8420. And I would just like to say thank you for doing the 3 hours parking and the 15 minutes, but the only thing you didn't do is something for the handicap. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hennessy. All right, who's next? Yes, sir.
Does that come out? No? Hey everybody, my name is Joseph Fisher. I live at 310 West 6th Street. A few items tonight. First of all, thank you for the nice invocation by Councilor Hunt mentioning Earth Day. That is one of the reasons I'm here today, is that we do have a great program in our city for collecting recyclables from residences. I think we need to have stronger rules around apartment buildings here downtown having recyclable bins as well. I've been finding myself throwing away a lot of glass, and while we do have a recycling facility, it's not really practical for your average person to get all that stuff there. The other thing too is this is actually, and don't worry, I'm not going to start complaining about it. This is just a question of fact. When is our current parking contract until? Can that be answered? I just was curious.
I think 2027.
2027. Okay, cool. So I've been working on some art, and I really liked the old meters and how cool they looked. I don't know if our contract allows us to do something similar with our posts or meters, or if that's, if this is kind of the hardware as a service model kind of thing where we can't do those kind of modifications. I'd like to suggest that if we're not allowed to, if we do renew that, we have some flexibility there. Also, like I said, I'm an artist. And you can find some of my stuff at, and I'm sorry for the juvenile nature of this, but I was educated in Royal Oak schools. The web address is josephf.art. Hey, there we go. Yeah, I do Uber for a living. Yeah, and I picked up a guy at Sleep Number, or from his house to go to Sleep Number at work one day, and I said, you know what my sleep number is? He goes, no, what? I said 90 proof. All right. That's enough with the jokes. But yeah, you can actually find a piece with that parking, about the parking. It's all of my pictures I collected over the summer of 2022, and it's placed over the kind of superimposed over the new meter thing. So there's art, parking, meters, environment. I think that about covers it for now. See you around.
Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor. Bill Harrison, resident since 1941. It appears that the surface parking lot style kiosks are not generating complaints, as we've seen on the street. These kiosks require entering the vehicle license plate number. Photos are taken as the vehicle enters and leaves the service lot. There's a 15-minute grace period, and time can be added via cell phone. Why not replace the on-street kiosks with the type used in the surface lots? That would perhaps fix the problem. Regarding your appointment today that was on the consent agenda, it's interesting that you are appointing your enforcer to the Planning Commission before the lawsuit for assault is adjudicated. Regarding the hiring of 11 new employees, since you folks assumed control in 2013, administrative services have increased by 72%. City manager's staff has increased by 180%. The property tax millage has increased by 52.4%, and now you want to add 11 more employees. Anyway, regarding the master plan, how many residents are really aware that the new master plan will not be subject to a public vote? And why does page 36 of the McKenna report mention the 15-minute city, a concept being promoted in Europe by Klaus Schwab, a devout communist, president of the World Economic Forum? Don't understand it. I have previously referred to Royal Oak as the Socialist Republic of Royal Oak when people ask me where I live. It is also an ineptocracy, and that is a system of government where the least capable lead and are elected by the least capable of producing, and where the members of society least likely to sustain themselves or succeed are rewarded with goods and services paid for by the confiscation of wealth from the diminished number of producers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. All right, who's next? Yes, sir. Is it possible to provide a handout? Yeah, if you have handouts, just drop them off at our city clerk and she can pass them down for us.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ben Rowe, and I'm a resident at 1115 Vincetta Boulevard. I'm here to talk about the median sidewalk project. that is on tonight's agenda. Overall, I support the program, but I would like to present a few options that I believe are more aligned with the city's master plan of neighborhood connectivity while reducing the impacts to some of the property owners. Just making sure you guys all have the handout. So the first option is to eliminate the portion of the sidewalk in the right-of-way at 1115 Vincetta, and that's location 1, as shown on the information provided from the engineering department. And I'm suggesting this for a couple of reasons, and would like to note that this location is unique in that it is not a corner lot. First, the sidewalk is located towards the center of the property, which, in my opinion, is visually unappealing. And I'm sure very few of us have a driveway that is in the middle of our lot as well. And the second reason is I believe the sidewalk would get minimal use. From living in this home for several years, the vast majority of people who cross the road are traveling to and from the north. Pedestrians currently use the driveway to cross the road, and they would continue to do so even if the sidewalk was constructed. They would typically use the wider, more direct route, and it's kind of shown as the red dashed line on that exhibit there. The second option is to locate the sidewalk on the north side of the driveway. Again, location 1 per the engineering department's assessment. And this option addresses 2 of the concerns. The sidewalk is located towards the edge of the lot, and it encourages pedestrians to use the sidewalk in lieu of the driveway as it is positioned more appropriately to the higher volume of pedestrian travel. And then the third option is to connect the sidewalks from Fairlawn to Lawndale, and that's locations 1 and 2 on the engineering department's report. And this is shown on the rear of the handout. Flip it over with the green lines. And this option solves the concerns noted earlier, while creating opportunities for community engagement, such as an area for benches or historical markers. As I understand, the Historical District Study Committee is currently going through the bridges on Vincetta as part of that program. And today, a fair amount of people use the median to cross directly from Fairlawn and Lawndale, and this would give them a safer path to do so. And I believe this option likely influences the largest quantity of pedestrians by supporting their normal walking behaviors. And with that, thank you so much for your consideration and all that you do for the city. And I hope that I may have been able to present some information that is useful during your decision-making process.
Thank you very much. Okay, who's next? Mr. Ashley.
Alan Ashley, Royal Oak Manor. I like to back up Mr. Harrison's plan for the parking on Washington and Center Streets. The back end, you do not need it. All you need to do is change what you have out there. Those things, those are computers, easily changed. All you have to do is put your license plate number in. It already knows what parking spot you're on. And because of the new hours, you will attract more people by parking head in. You continue this back end parking, even though you increase the hours, you will lose Washington and Center Street. It's an easy thing to do. If you can do it in the kiosks on the flat parking lots, you should be able to do it on all the back ends. Either the company won't do it or not capable of doing it, which means they don't have the talent or the programming. It's a simple thing to do. I spent over 40 years programming. I started with key punching and worked up to programs. I was a senior programmer and systems analyst. I talked to users all the time. I solved their problems. This main problem that we have with this century is because somebody who thought there was a terrific plan did not do their due diligence and check out other cities that have this and are now finding out these cities are getting rid of this system. This falls only on that person and this commission for not doing their due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashley. All right, who's next tonight? We'll go in the back corner here first. Is that Ms. Narnacki?
Jean Sarnacki, 802 West 4th Street. Bear with me as I have to modify a little bit. I have half of what I'm going to say this evening. By reading the agenda for tonight's meeting, we learned that the neighborhood protest petition that we submitted was certified by the city. While we were confident that it would be, we had hoped that the city would at least notify us. And now that we are in a process where this is being extended out with an unknown timeline, I hope there's better communication as we are now active participants in how you all will be voting on this in the near future, hopefully near future. I am requesting some clarification for this process now that I have a delay. If the petitioner does come back with a PUD proposal or a conditional zoning request that looks very different from the original proposal, will it need to go back to the Planning Commission again? ZBA? It seems like it should. How big of a change would cause this to be sent back to the Planning Commission, and who will decide? How will we be notified, and how much notice will be given? So I think these are some fairly significant questions. This building, this site, can be so much more than what has been presented to date. I did recently sign a petition by one of my neighbors regarding the possibility of townhouses or condos that are sized to match the neighborhood, and she covered a far wider area than the initial petition that has modified your voting. It was getting great support from the residents that reside, that she was able to speak with. Even after 10 years of neglect, we still have a vision that we hope our leaders, you, can embrace. I myself am also in support of an adult foster care facility, something that was brought to my attention as a need in Royal Oak by a former member of the Senior Advisory Committee. More so than the rentals, as we are already at 60% in our neighborhood, which I suspect is significantly more than any of you have in your immediate neighborhoods. Please say no to this project and encourage the owners to present something more in line with the single or multifamily zoning without the outrageous variances. And I also want to let you know that as an update, since the last City Commission meeting, the petitioner has made no attempt to still contact or engage with neighbors. This despite several of you suggesting it and a couple of our neighbors actually speaking to them after the last meeting. They reached out. This is consistent with the petitioner's behavior since the beginning. And of course, the owner, hopefully he's caring for patients in Dearborn. But anyway, thank you very much this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Sarnacki. Who's next? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Patsy Reggio, 1403 Smith Avenue, Royal Oak. I'm going to read from the paper that was published in the Royal Oak Review on April 19th. I'm going to read the last part first. City Manager Brake. Brake said one thing to consider with proposed development is that there is the chance if the commission rejects a project, the next project proposed at the site could have more density. There's market pressures around, and there's certainly a demand for all types of housing. So it'd just be a matter of time that something would be going in there, he said. It could be more units. It could be a taller building, he continued. It could bring it in that much more that the number of people that come in and out with cars, visitors, and all that. Well, you know what? Fear tactics don't work. This is the local government. Quit trying to scare people. That's how I feel about it. You're trying to put fear in them. Okay, we've got a lot of people here who have good ideas about that building. They've lived here forever. Their money is in their homes. Okay, then, I'll read what the one resident said. A resident of almost 40 years spoke against the project. She said the city has been enjoyed, and the protections of the current master plan and zoning ordinance which protected their homes would also allowing economic growth in the downtown, but feels the development would have a negative effect on the neighborhood. Okay, I feel that way too. I don't live in that area, but I went to Dondero. I graduated in '62. The beginning of this meeting, the first two speakers were amazing. It was so heartwarming to hear about Victoria, how she loved this all-American city that I grew up in. And the library, thinking about the library, that lady that runs the library is amazing. I see someone in the back room that I don't respect. She said, we're going to make Royal Oak the example for the whole United States of America. You know, what's not broken, don't fix it. Have you ever heard if it's not broken, don't fix it? We received state money and federal government, and that is why all the citizens in Royal Oak should know. That is why they're telling us what to do, how high to jump, and that's why the city is changing. Because we're getting grants. The city was a city for 100 years, and we survived without that. You are so lucky to be sitting up there. You are not doing their job. How can you fly the American flag when you don't honor it? You don't respect these citizens. You don't respect these citizens. The one person I respect is the one person in the middle in the planning committee, and he's the one person I respect of all the committees.
All right, ma'am, your time's up.
I already know that.
Okay. Who's next? Going once. Going twice. Oh, I see. We'll go in the corner, and then my hand was already motioning that way. Yes, sir. You come on.
Thank you. Rodney Catan, homeowner at 507 South Laurel Street, Royal Oak, for the last 31 years. 2 weeks ago, you were presented with the request for possible rezoning at 718 West 4th Street to be multifamily zoned, and I'm here to request that you deny it and the site plan. I was encouraged, though, by the insightful questioning from several of the city commissioners at your last meeting, and I came here to thank you for that and to kind of add on to where you went there. Commissioner DeBuck quickly focused last time on the rationale or justification for the rezoning, specifically paragraphs A through G at the beginning of the motion. We learned through the commissioner's questioning that, this is a direct quote from that meeting, quote, all those conditions, meaning paragraphs A through G, all those conditions we interpreted from the planning commissioner's statements about approval, end of quote. Simply put, those conditions, or so-called rationale A through G, were composed after the 3-2 vote to approve and were later inserted into the official motion that you have before you. January 10th Plan Commission meeting recording provides confirmation. So I'm saying that regardless of how you intend to vote, I believe paragraphs A through G should be removed from the motion because process integrity matters. Secondly, second reason to remove these from the motion is that these 7 assertions are written with authority and may sound like they're based on fact, that they're evidence-based, that they're backed by actual documentation, but case in point, they're really not. Case in point is that, and I'm quoting from paragraph B, demolishing the existing building and redeveloping the property with single-family dwellings is not economically feasible, end of quote. Last time, Commissioner DeBuck asked, is that fact based on fact? The answer he got was they, meaning the petitioner, didn't come to us with financial documents to demonstrate that. In fact, the petitioner has never submitted such documents or even tried to make such an argument to justify why they have financial hardship if they try to comply with existing zoning. The planning department confirmed that for me. And I think closer examination of the other 6 rationale, you'll be able to likely uncover more flimsy justifications. So the third thing I'd like to say about this, why you should get rid of paragraphs A through G, is that most of the assertions don't have a direct connection. They don't have a direct connection to the actual proposal. Said another way, these appear to be rationale in search of a project rather than rationale that support this particular project. For example, last time many of you questioned the validity of paragraph D relating to affordable housing. So, 3 reasons to reject it: lack of process integrity, lack of evidence-based rationale or documentation, and lack of connection between the so-called rationale in either this project or our wonderful neighborhood west of West Street. I invite you to come visit us and actually learn what a great neighborhood we have. We are quite welcoming, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Catan. Yes.
Charlene Pike, 325 South Maple Avenue. Mayor and City Commissioners, my comments concern 718 West 4th Street. I support the petitioner's request to postpone until a future meeting. Hopefully, they'll make an effort to meet with the neighborhood group. They have vocalized this desire multiple times at the Planning Commission and here, yet have not made any effort to do so. It would also give them an opportunity to decide what their plans actually are, since the current site plan is very vague. During the Planning Commission public hearing in January and at the April 10th City Commission meeting, the parties for the petitioner disagreed, argued, contradicted one another regarding all the aspects of their proposal's design and vision. Many options were verbalized, yet none of them are on the plans and none of them are in the written proposal. I also ask that you hold a public hearing regarding this proposal before any final decision is made. It would provide an opportunity for the petitioner to present updated, more detailed site plans, for more focused comments from citizens who may be impacted by this project, and for an update on a lot of new information that has come to light since the initial public hearing in the Planning Commission 4 months ago. I could support a reduced number of units that fit a multifamily residential zoning, but the standards would not have to require a vast number of exceptions like the current proposal. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you for your service to the city.
Thank you, Ms. Pike. All right, in the back.
Hi, Andrea Carollo. I live at 611 West 4th. I'm here to voice my opposition to the proposal for 718 West 4th. Obviously, the city is in the process of developing a new master plan, but until that is done, we have to remember that the current master plan is still in effect, and it does not support the approval of this proposal whatsoever. What's interesting is that the consulting firm our city has hired for the master plan revision process actually provided advice to another Michigan community regarding a developer's rezoning proposal there. Guess what that advice was? That they should follow the current master plan whenever possible. If a developer wants to rezone inconsistent with the master plan, then they need to make a compelling case as to why the rezoning would benefit the community. Rezoning needs to hold value for the residents. How can that be said of this proposal? Look at how many people show up to every single meeting thus far. Meanwhile, where's that petitioner to oppose it? It's not affordable housing. It's not designated senior housing. It's not LEED certified, environmentally friendly. In fact, they violated environmental demolition rules and were cited by Eagle. The only benefit of approving this proposal would be to the negligent developer's pocketbook. I have so many questions regarding this proposal. Number one, why is the petitioner saying it's not just what we don't want to do that? Considered an acceptable response when asked by the commissions why they aren't pursuing a plan to use the building as a convalescent home, which it would be approved to be used for. Two, why is the petitioner saying it won't work financially, an acceptable response without any further research or data when asked by the commissions why they would not consider new development that is permitted by zoning and the master plan, or pursue approval of a less egregious multifamily proposal that's better suited to the neighborhood. I have proof here that it actually could financially work. Houses are selling for over $1 million, built on lots paid for $270,000. The Harrison was selling at $375 a square foot for new construction condos. It can work. Why aren't we asking for additional addresses of the petitioner's previous projects or more precise information regarding their true intent? They actually refer to the units as hotel-sized. Does that mean we're going to end up with a motel? The petitioner's presentation reminds me of John Lovett's pathological liar sketch on Saturday Night Live, in that they kept revising the responses to fit what they thought we'd want to hear. Continued work with this devil that we know either makes us look really stupid or complicit. The comparison of the Amber on 11 is also completely not accurate. It's on 11 Mile. It's next to a used car dealership. And lastly, something is better than nothing is not a legitimate argument in support of this heinous proposal. Rules, laws, zoning, they exist for a reason. They are the objective guidelines that our elected public officials are supposed to follow when deciding to approve or deny a proposal, not a subjective proverb. But if that's not what we're going to do, then maybe we need to change our city slogan to Royal Oak, where something is better than nothing.
Okay, thank you. Time's up. All right, who's next? Yes, ma'am, in the back corner.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Dora Beltricitis, 320 South Pleasant. I'm here to talk about two topics. My first topic is regarding the proposal. It was 15 to 20 years ago at 718 West 4th Street. I believe they wanted to put in 16 condos, which is actually 9 fewer than what's being proposed today. I wanted to share why I disagreed with the proposal back then. It was because the design included 16 balconies on the back side of the units, which essentially would have looked directly into my kitchen and backyard, as well as those of my neighbors, invading our privacy. If the proposed design excluded the balconies or had fewer units, I would have supported it. Which leads me to my second topic, which is the current proposal for that location. The owner of the site hasn't attended the city meetings, but the architect and developer have. At multiple meetings since January, they've emphasized that they're willing to work with the city and the neighbors to design and develop something desirable and amenable to the neighborhood. I'd really hoped that would happen, but unfortunately, to my knowledge, they have not reached out to the neighbors for input. For the past several meetings I've attended, I've shared my views as to why I don't support the current proposal for 25 apartments at 718 West 4th, but I haven't really spoken about what I think would be acceptable. So I spent a good part of this past weekend going door to door to talk to my neighbors on 4th Street, on Oakdale, South Maple, South Pleasant, and South Laurel, to get their opinion and to see if they would support and sign the simple petition I created, which I forwarded on. My petition opposes the current proposal but welcomes other less dense housing options, such as condos, townhomes, or single-family homes at 718 West 4th. As I was going through the neighborhood, unfortunately, a lot of people weren't home. Many were renters versus homeowners, and some weren't willing to open the door to a stranger, which is understandable, of course. However, of the neighbors I did talk to, more than 85% were happy and grateful to sign my petition. If I had another day, I'm sure I could have gotten at least 25 more signatures. I got 49. Like myself, what I heard from the homeowners surrounding the area is that they have invested their blood, sweat, and tears into their homes. They've invested their livelihoods into their homes and have lived in them from between 5 and 60 years. They don't want to see 25 more apartments on 4th Street. It's a residential neighborhood. We already have apartments, duplexes, and rentals throughout. However, the residents would embrace having lower density condos, townhomes, or single-family homes that blend into the neighborhood. I feel strongly that with the right design and materials, developing of any of these options would provide a significant return on the investment of the investor and owner. I ask that the Commission reject the current proposal, and I thank you for your time and the opportunity to express my opinion.
Thank you for those excellent comments. Yes, ma'am.
Rebecca Nord-Lama, 313 South Maple. I'm here about 4th Street. I'm here because I'm serious about 4th Street. Everybody that spoke is serious about 4th Street. They are not serious about 4th Street. They're not here to even see if that passed tonight. They weren't serious when they went to the planning board. They were not prepared. They weren't serious when they came to the last meeting. They were not prepared. They weren't serious when the city came out and they were doing demolition and they stopped them, put stickers on the door. A few hours later, they came back. Not once, but many times. They're not serious. Why? Why should we allow them to have this here? They're not serious. Now, when people aren't serious, what happens is more problems come from it. You see that all the time. If they were serious, they would be here. They would be prepared. If I was having any kind of construction done on my house and the people that came were not serious, I would not give them a second chance. You're done. Well, Royal Oak is everybody's home that's here. Take it serious. They don't. Royal Oak is a gem. I said this last time. We live in a gem. So set the example. People either need to come prepared, come with open to the neighborhood. When they say something, do it. They keep saying they're going to talk to us, they don't. We want serious. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who's next? Going once. Going twice. All right, we're going to close public comment and bring the meeting back to this side of the table, which brings us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda? Oh. Commissioner Colo.
It's been a while, okay? Sorry, just let me pull it up here. Item J, please.
To confirm, J as in Jester?
Yes, you.
Okay. Approval of agreement for Woodward Dream Cruise food concessions. That's what you'd like to pull off. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Does anyone make a motion to approve the consent agenda, absent or not including item J, which we'll discuss after? We have a motion, I think, by Commissioner Macy. I saw a hand movement. All right. Is there a second? Well, we'll go second by Commissioner DeBuck. All right. Discussion on the consent agenda, less item J. All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Commissioner Colo, floor is yours. Item J.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a contract with Jackson 5-Star Catering. As many at this table might recall, over the last couple of years, this is the company that came to us and asked for 7,500 back during the pandemic, and this contract is less for what we've been provided by them over the last 10 years or so. So I was just hoping that the administration could give us a little background on how we landed at a 5-year contract at this price, and if there's maybe some other ways we can go about this.
Is that a question for Mr. Fideli?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, Brian Commissioners. So in doing some research on the concession process as a whole for the Dream Cruise, back as far as the records I could find through my documents, back in 2005 to 2007, there were individual concessionaires, and they all had to apply to become a concessionaire for the Dream Cruise. I could not find any records of what the going rate was back then, but I do have record that individually, the city would receive applications for multiple concessionaire vendors that would take over the park at Memorial Park and offer food for the patrons there. In 2015 was one of the first years I found where the concessionaire aspect was bid out as a whole. So there would be one concession group overseeing multiple different vendors, which if I had to make a pretty good guess on, probably made the process a little bit more easier to have one concessionaire oversee multiple vendors rather than have city staff try to apply for different vendors. Jackson 5-Star back in 2015 was the only bidder at that time, and they initially had a $12,000 contract, and then which was increased to $15,000 in 2016. They've been with the city as far as a concession for the Dream Cruise since 2015 at a going rate of $15,000. Last year was their last year on the contract prior to taking this concessionaire out to bid. And once again, this year they were the only ones that had bid on the RFP. They did bid at $12,001, which is significantly less than what their going rate was in the previous 10 years of $15,000. I had a conversation with their CEO and asked the reason for the decrease in the bid, and I also asked if they would be willing to renegotiate the bid and do a similar contract where GM Car Show has with the city, increasing the $1,000 each year. Their response was they were comfortable with the $12,000. The concession business is dwindling, and with the addition to the Woodward Corners lot on Woodward, they've seen a reduction in traffic coming to their concession food vendors. So with the $12,000, they're the only bid. I'm seeking approval to have them be our concessionaire for the next 5 years and kind of see where the landscape of concessions go.
So I guess the question I would have, Mr. Mayor, would be, could this be maybe perhaps a 3-year contract, right? Instead of 5 years, maybe give them that, concession.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, in general, I'm against 5-year contracts unless there's a clear and, present benefit to the city. And I think in these cases, if you have issues in year 2 of underperformance, or there's new ideas or concepts, or a lot of things can change with the cruise in 5 years, I think obligating us for that long a time is always something I've debated up here, whether it was Verizon. No, you remember those discussions. Or the golf course. We did like a 10-year agreement on that or something like that. I think that I just am generally uncomfortable, especially with something that's so mobile. What's the capital expense? They're coming up and setting up that they would normally do on a Saturday or whatever. So I think everything he says makes sense. They're clearly good at what they do. They show up. They're interested, but the 5 years a little, especially if we're reducing the amount of money, it seems like we should probably reduce the amount of tenure of the contract. Any other comments? Commissioner Macy?
So maybe this question for Mr. Leal. So if that's the will of this body, could we send him back with an approval for the 3 years today, or do we have to approve this contract as presented, or else we can bring it back?
You could always approve it at less than 5 years. That's your discretion. Whether or not the actual proposer would accept it it's more like a counter offer that you're making if you do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's the only thing that's changing in the contract, give it a shot and see what they say. Maybe Commissioner Cola, you want to make a motion?
I would move that we approve this for a term no more than 3 years.
Okay, the motion by Commissioner Colo. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubak. Discussion on it? Yeah, I think 3 years is a lot of time. I don't think it fundamentally changes the relationship or whatever. And, we're giving some, leaving money on the table. Let's just, I want to be able to reevaluate it in a reasonable period of time. And at an inflation rate of, 10% a year, we'll be taking cuts for 5 years, on this. So a call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. I think that was all the items off the consent agenda, which brings us to item 8, which is the Michigan Liquor Control Commission Establishment Riding the Rails, LLC. Request to amend plan of operation to add street patio services. Chief Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Excuse me. Riding the Rails Iron Horse has approached us and they want to add a street patio as part of their plan of operation. This proposed area would take up 2 public parking spaces on West 4th Street, and it would offer seating for 30 patrons inside this area. Really, the overall indoor footprint will remain unchanged, and really this is the only change that they're asking for. They've pledged their cooperation with our noise ordinance and have been in contact with adjoining business fronts, and there has been no opposition to what they're asking for. One thing I will point out is alcohol service will be by the wait staff only. There won't be any walk-up service or patrons taking the alcohol from the restaurant to the street patio area itself. The police department does not typically respond to this address for any types of problems. I believe we went one time over the last year, and it was not regarding anything to do with alcohol service, so the police department is not opposed to their request at all.
Questions for the chief? Any motions? Commissioner Macy?
I'll move approval.
Motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubak. Discussion? Very simple. We like outdoor dining. We want people to, when it's a sunny day, to think Royal Oak. Come on down, and maybe you don't have a destination in mind, but you'll find one driving around searching for parking, I guess.
Not if you use the app.
Not if you use the app. Or if you go right to the structure, you can walk around and find one. Very easy.
Turn good thing.
Nice recovery.
Yeah, wrap it up.
All right. No, I think it's I think the folks that manage there do a really good job. Excellent, cool restaurant in Royal Oak, and I think they'll do even a better job with this opportunity afforded. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right. That brings us to approval of a license agreement for the same location for the outdoor dining street patio. I see Ms. Donahue is here.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll just piggyback briefly on what the chief had mentioned. He already described the usage there as a street patio. The only thing I'll add is that they are encroaching in front of their neighboring business at 314 West 4th, but they did sign an affidavit approving the use there. They've paid their meter fees. They'll have 5 picnic tables out there. So now that we have an amended plan of operation approved, there's no other hurdles here, and we recommend approval of the license agreement.
Any questions?
I'm sorry, I don't have a question, but I had a motion. Whenever you're ready. I move approval of this agreement.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Colo. Any second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right. This brings us to item 10, which is review of potential new sidewalks, Vincetta Boulevard median. City Engineer Donahue.
Yes. So back in April of 2021, the Traffic Committee had brought some recommendations for Vincetta Boulevard between Woodward and 12 Mile. And one of the approved recommendations was to look at installing crossings across the boulevard of Vincetta the next time the sidewalk program is in that area, which is this year, 2023. Right now, there's no sidewalk ramps or sidewalks that help pedestrians cross over the median, so you really just have to walk in the road, usually at those turnarounds, to cross from one side to the other. As you know, that's a pretty popular bike area. Kids and runners like to use Vincetta quite a bit. We actually have a road project going on right now on Vincetta, and it really would make the most sense if you do wish to move forward with these to install them as part of that road project, rather than installing a brand new road and then coming in and cutting out curbs to put these ramps in. So that's why we're kind of trying to put this in front of you tonight to get some direction on how to move forward. So there are 6 side streets, which I've identified here in just the overall general map, where we could look at putting these crossings, and I do have a detailed summary of each location in your packet, and certainly can go over those in detail if you wish. We are recommending that new crossings be installed at 5 of the 6 locations. The only one we're recommending skipping is this red one, number 2, which is at Fairlawn, and that's really just because it's so close to the other 2 crossings. It really would only serve 2 houses, so it didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense there. The Historic District City Committee, as you know, is working to designate the median of Vincetta as a historic area. And so we did share this report with them. They had a meeting last week to discuss it, just to see if there were any concerns. They are in favor of the walkways. They like the idea of making this median more of a park-like setting and more easy for pedestrians to use. Their biggest concern was that we protect the trees out there, because some of them are pretty old and important. So when we laid all these out in the packet, that was taken into consideration, is how we can weave some of these paths around the trees. The cost for the 5 recommended locations that staff is recommending is just a little bit over $40,000. We would cover that by the major road fund as part of the Vincetta Road project. So if you are in agreement with that, or if you want to change that, I have the other dollar amounts we can finagle around here. But I do have a contract modification recommended as well for Ajax Paving to add this to their scope of work, because I believe they'll be ready to start doing those removals as early as next week.
Questions? Commissioner Hunt.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue. I appreciate you preparing this design to work around some of those existing trees, but many of these crosswalks are very close to those trees. Will the manipulation of the ground and implementing these sidewalks, will that harm any of the roots of those trees, which could cause damage to those trees down the line?
Shouldn't. We'll be using any excavators out there to move dirt as needed and to bring in like crushed stone and get the base preparation. Yeah, some tree roots might get trimmed a little bit, but we've done the sidewalk program enough to kind of know how far away we need to stay from trees to protect them. So that's why we laid it out the way that we did. Granted, we didn't have a detailed survey, so the quantities that we have are pretty close, but we'll manipulate it in the field as needed to make sure we're working around those. Because, like I said, the Historic Committee is very protective of those, so we know that they're really important.
Thank you.
Commissioner Macy.
Sort of tagging on that. So I mean, they're pretty close together. I mean, there's like 6, I guess 5, seems like kind of a lot for right there. Does that, just because we're trying to be careful about not, preserving our green spaces and our trees, I'm especially looking at 4 and 5, look like, they're kind of right next to each other. How did they feel, how did the Historic Commission feel about the number? Did they feel like it was appropriate to really have them at almost every street, or did they have a thought on it?
They did not comment on that.
Okay. And then I was also going to ask if you saw what our public commenter brought in.
I did. Thanks to Commissioner Colo for sharing that with me. So this was location number 1 at Lawndale, which let me scroll down and we'll look at that a little closer. So originally I actually wanted to put it on this side of the road. We found on the south side of Lawndale that there's actually some pretty substantial grading issues, and we'd have a lot of flooded sidewalk if we tried to build it over here. So that wasn't going to work, so that's the reason it is on the north side of that intersection. In terms of the request to kind of reroute it, I do think this is the most direct route. For example, if you were you wanted to walk over to Lawndale and you were walking north, it might feel weird to go past it, come back, and go down. But it's not the end of the world. It's just this is the most direct route. So what he had presented as option 2, I think is doable. Again, we'd have to watch out for the trees and accommodate that as best we can. I think option 3 really just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Having people walk that far in the median, I don't think it would get used. It's a lot of extra sidewalk as well. So if you prefer to go with that different layout for option 2, that's certainly something that we could accommodate. Skipping backwards, option 1 that he presented, we're directing pedestrians just to use the driveway approach. I know people do it all the time, but if we're putting new ramps in, we should be directing them to ADA compliant ramps, not somebody's driveway. So that's just best practice.
Commissioner Prush.
I don't have any questions. Oops, I need this on. I don't have any questions for Ms. Donahue, but I have a lot more information that came from the neighborhood. So I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or wait, and maybe Kyle has some questions for
No, maybe you'll answer half of Kyle's questions.
It could very well be. I live in this neighborhood. I live where the NO is on Woodsboro, just off of Vincetta. And we've lived there since 1984, so we're pretty familiar with the neighborhood. We're pretty familiar with how the neighborhood operates, so to speak. There are a lot of walkers in this neighborhood, just because of the beauty of the neighborhood. The distance from 12 Mile to Woodward, down Vincetta and back in one walk around is almost exactly 1 mile, so that if you're timing or you're measuring your walking progress, if you do the Vincetta loop around from 12 Mile to Woodward, you know you've done a mile. A lot of walkers. We also have a neighborhood book club that I'm a member of, and I shared the memorandum and the diagram for these potential sidewalks with the book club over the weekend and got a bunch of responses. Almost to a person, with one exception, they are very opposed to the sidewalks. They walk over these bridges and down these sidewalks along Vincetta all the time. And their points are pretty consistent throughout the group. First of all, if this was a safety issue, if there was a history of accidents on this, pedestrian encounters with cars, that kind of stuff, reports of incidents, that would be one thing. And the neighborhood understands that would be a serious consideration. But to their knowledge, and to my knowledge, there haven't been any. And I think it's because of the way the bridges are constructed. You're approaching a bridge and you want to get from one side of the Vincetta to the other. You can pretty easily see down Vincetta what is approaching, because the danger is someone approaching either from the south or from the north on Vincetta. It's not what happens over the bridge. Because once you're on the bridge, you're in an elevated ramp. The bridges, the surface of the bridges is not level with Vincetta. They're elevated so that when you're on a bridge and crossing over it, you're up high. And the cars can see you. They can see you coming. And the danger is not so much from cars coming down Vincetta, but it's cars approaching from the side, down Cedar Hill or Woodsboro, one of the other side streets. And they can see you because there's a stop sign there and they look across the bridge. So the residents feel very strongly that the safety issue is not an issue. It doesn't drive this proposal, and it's not a compelling reason to go ahead and do this. They also note that in other boulevards in the city that have crossovers like this, we don't have sidewalks. There are no sidewalks, for example, on Northwood, or there's no sidewalks on the north side of Vincetta, either between 12 Mile and Crooks or Crooks and Main. And people seem to operate there using those pedestrian or vehicular crossovers pretty easily and safely. Also, there's not up on Lexington and Mount Vernon. There just aren't any cross or sidewalks through those boulevards. Also, one of the concerns that brought this whole issue of traffic and so on Vincetta to the traffic committee a couple of years ago was speeding traffic down Vincetta, especially as it would occur coming off of Woodward and going up to cut through the neighborhood, or vice versa, to have the Woodward or 12 Mile traffic come down Vincetta to get to Woodward. Now the entrance to Vincetta on to Woodward is being redesigned as part of the whole construction project. And you're going to be able to come down Vincetta and turn north on Woodward, but you're not going to be able to come north on Woodward and turn onto Vincetta. That entrance area is essentially being eliminated so that you're not going to be able to go. So I don't think we're going to have the speeding traffic of people whipping off of Woodward and flying up Vincetta to get to 12 Mile, because they're not going to be able to turn there anymore. They're going to have to get back to the neighborhood in order to go that direction, and that's with the circuitous streets, they're just not going to do that. So that's one change, design change, that's already going to go into. The one exception that a couple of residents suggested was a crossing at Lawndale, which is the crossing that the gentleman who lives at 11110 brought up this evening, because there is a tendency for cars southbound on Vincetta who want to get to Catalpa, either to go eastbound to Catalpa or to cross to Catalpa to get to Trader Joe's, which is right at the corner of Catalpa and Woodward, to go down, to turn at the Lawndale crossover and go down Iroquois. Traffic tends to go the other way sometimes. It'll come through Catalpa, up to Iroquois or Oak Ridge, down Lawndale, and then go up Vincetta. So there tends to be a lot more traffic on that crossover, and there's no bridge. So there's no elevated place for you to see pedestrians. So if a pedestrian is walking there with a stroller or just walking, they're at ground level. They're not elevated on a bridge. So the suggestion from people in the neighborhood is if you're going to put in any sidewalk at all, put one at Lawndale, because that's where, from a safety standpoint, it makes sense, because that's where the traffic tends to concentrate. The one thing that everyone said was they really think that the sidewalks will seriously detract from the aesthetics of the boulevard. Everyone enjoys walking in the grassy areas. They like the wildflowers, they like the trees, they like to play. We see kids out there playing baseball and all kinds of other stuff. And they really think that adding sidewalks would just ruin that aesthetic. They're really very proud of it, and they would like to maintain it as it is. And that was the totality of their comments. I guess I'll just end by saying that the people who live there and who walk on that boulevard just about every day, a lot of walking, really don't think it's necessary and really thinks that it's a bad idea aesthetically, and they really hope that you don't approve this.
Commissioner Colo.
Wow, so I hate to follow that, Commissioner Prush. You know, a really smart person made a motion back in 2021 to ask staff to look at those crossings. And it was Commissioner Prush, actually at the time, Mayor Pro Tem Prush, directed staff to put this together for review in the 2023 program. Oh man, you know, I look at the pain that the sidewalk, the perceived pain the sidewalk program has been. You know, there's a lot of sidewalks have gone in over the last decade or so where people have thought maybe it wasn't the best idea. But as for the complete streets, it was to complete the walkability of Royal Oak. You know, I do look at other boulevards. You listed a few in the northern section of the city, but I think down the south, you know, 4th Street, every sidewalk has a way to cross, right?
Yeah,
and you see people use those all the time. And I'm looking at the map and what's here, and yes, you can walk down someone's driveway if you want cross lane, walk down someone's driveway, walk into the street, walk up someone else's driveway, but we don't have curb cuts to get across. So if, you know, there's someone in a wheelchair, how do they cross? We just tell them, go up, it's okay, you're gonna be safe because you're at the top of this this bridge, and maybe someone can slow you down on the way down, right? A mom, a kid, I know, gosh, my kids would race across those bridges. It'd be a lot of fun for them, but, you know, we put these sidewalks in for people to utilize. So I'm sure it is functional as is. What does it, you know, how does it improve the neighborhood? And you know, I'm not quite sure. Looking at the other areas I had as, you know, sidewalks been in, I don't think aesthetically, I don't know how much it changed. So I'd be interested to hear what everyone else thinks. But you know, we have a long history of making sure that we have a complete way, that we have a way to cross from, you know, point A to point B to connect the city, and to make sure that it's not about able-bodied people, but, you know, those who might not be as able as others. So I'd be interested to see how that goes.
Commissioner DeBuck.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that perspective Commissioner Prush brings from the neighborhood. Although, you know, we've heard a lot of those arguments from many other sidewalk petitioners or opposers before, that they're ugly or that they're going to hurt the green space or that they're unnecessary. Commissioner Cole's right. We approach this from a complete streets perspective for public safety and accessibility. And certainly getting across that boulevard, if you have a mobility disability, is certainly going to be more challenging without a properly graded sidewalk. That being said, it's not a hill I'm going to die on, but the gentleman who heard a public comment and from the city engineer, I do like, if we were to move forward with this, I do like option 2, and it's because where the current recommendation is, I think it splits right between 2 trees. So there's a well-established tree and then a smaller tree, and I think the option of like coming across from the other side of the driveway and angling would allow you to get maximum distance from those routes. So that's my primary thought. And if we were to move forward with this, I kind of like option 2. I think it's appropriate to put sidewalks here, but I'm not super passionate about it. I think it does complete our streets. I think it's important for accessibility.
Commissioner Douglas.
And like Commissioner DeBuck, this is not a hill I will die on, but I will say that if you've been to Europe, there are many places in the older parts of cities where pedestrians and vehicles share pathways successfully and safely. And here we have these historic bridges, or probably soon to be designated as historic bridges, that are that feel that way. And so I'm not passionate on either side of this issue, but I just invite my fellow commissioners to consider the fact that people have been walking across those bridges for how many years, Commissioner Perush? Historic District
they
Study
were-
Committee, anyway.
At least 100 years.
At least 100 years. You know, if we want to save money and save asphalt, or not asphalt, but concrete, I could live with not putting those sidewalks in.
We'll go with Commissioner Perush and Commissioner Colo.
In terms of the accessibility issue, that's a valid point, but I do know personally of people who have had mobility issues, who have had to use walkers or wheelchairs. Also, there are a number of children in the neighborhood. I have personally escorted, grandchildren across multiple bridges in strollers and wagons and bicycles and so on and so forth. And not only is the traffic fairly minimal down Vincetta comparatively to everywhere else in the immediate neighborhood, like 12 Mile or Woodward, and Catalpa. But drivers, because I think of the way that the road is designed, are very conscious of looking out for potential pedestrians on the bridges. And they're very courteous. They stop, they wait for you to leave. I've never, ever heard of a resident being potentially hit by a vehicle on a bridge. In the years and years and years that we've lived there, I've just never, ever heard that happen. So I think Commissioner Douglas has a good point that at least in this neighborhood, the pedestrians and vehicles have coexisted very well for a very, very, very long time. And in terms of protecting the aesthetic of the entire boulevard and the way it looks now, I would seriously recommend not putting in the bridges, with the exception perhaps of the location at Lawndale, because of the amount of traffic that specific location carries. And whatever design you put for that, I don't really have a preference. But I think if you're going to put in at least one, that would be a good location.
And Commissioner Colo next.
Okay, so just to get this moving and just to see where the table stands, and because I do believe that it's not about the crossing at the bridge, which I agree, but it's the curb cuts, and we're putting the street in now. Like today's when we're repaving this, so curb cut now and putting in ADA ramps is cheaper than ever. This is the time to do it if we want to add it. So because of that, and with respect to Commissioner Perush, I am going to move approval of staff recommendations with the ability for staff to make modifications, particularly to option 2, number 2, to allow for the best.
I think it's number.
I'm sorry, option 1. Change your setting of them, doesn't mean. To make the best improvement for that.
So, out of clarity,
yep,
you're moving forward with staff's recommendation.
Give them the leeway to modify it if needed.
To modify, like the Lawndale, which would be number 1, to weave away from the driveway, et cetera. Is that what you're implying? Okay.
Et cetera is in the motion.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Colo. Is there a second? Okay, I guess the motion dies with no support. Is there another motion? Commissioner Macy?
I'll try the next level down.
Yeah.
I'm going to split the baby here. I'm going to approve 1, 4, and 6. Back to my theory that this is an awful lot and maybe the neighbors don't want them and maybe we think we need complete streets, and just splitting the baby right down the middle. And again, with the et cetera addition of allowing Ms. Donahue to use her judgment about the best way to do this, possibly considering these options that were presented to us, especially for Lawndale. So there we go. It's my baby splitting option.
So to be clear, to get clarity on your approval, or on your motion is to move forward with 1, 6, and 4.
Yep.
And with 1, or any of them, to consider input from public comment if it passes, to modify the design, with permission to modify the design and the accompanying costs that would go with that design change.
Yeah, and just along the lines that Commissioner Dubuck said, that if it seems like a little wiggle can save a tree, well, we're in favor of that.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Macy, second by Commissioner Colo. Discussion, Commissioner Dubak?
I'm not opposed to the motion, except that I think it's city engineer brought forward her recommendation on how these should be laid out. So I think if we do want something changed, we should probably be a little more explicit. And so I would move to amend the motion to say that number one, which number one's the one that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
To be more along the lines with option two. I mean, within your discretion to make it work right, but I would think coming on the other side of the driveway and then angling between those trees where there's much more space is better than navigating between those two really tight trees.
Okay, we have an amendment offered by Commissioner Dubak. Is there a second to obtain that clarity? No second. Okay, it's like Twilight Zone tonight. All right. I thought that was an excellent amendment, Commissioner Dubak. It provided clarity on the intent of the original motion maker. And by not seconding it, I guess we only give confusion back to our city. Okay. Let's go with Commissioner Macy.
Well, I absolutely understand the idea. It feels like we're making determinations based on how it looks on Google Maps, and so I wanted to give her more flexibility, because what if what we're looking at here is actually wrong, and she goes out with her little engineer brain and is like, my engineer brain tells me.
You have a big engineering brain, by the way.
Huge engineering brain, and is like, this tells me that this is wrong, and this, that really should go this way or that way. I just don't want her to feel like she's compelled to do option two if it turns out that's actually not the best. But I trust her, because I think she's heard what we've said, and she always takes what we say probably more seriously than she should.
So we have a motion on the table. I'm just going to say, is it clear what the general intent is with the design? Okay. Commissioner Colo?
I just wanted to add to what Commissioner Macy was saying is, if there's site conditions that change out, 4 and 6 also, that she'd be able to make those modifications as needed without having to come back to us. She has to add 3 flags, and that's another contract change. So that'd be something that she can administratively approve, was, I think, the intention.
Commissioner Dubak?
Unless I'm misunderstanding, this is a design recommendation that you've provided here, or just location?
We designed it to the level where we could apply the unit costs and come up with the estimate, but I always put a little fluff in there because I know stuff is going to change in the field. So if there are a few more flags, it will be fine.
I'm just saying, she specifically said that option 2 seems the most viable alternate. It just seems weird to be like, yeah, do what you think is best, but she already brought what she thought was best.
Right, which is why we aren't willing to overrule her in case what you think isn't best.
Well, I don't know then.
Wish I could second motions. All right, I guess we'll call for a vote. Again, the clarity is that the motion is to go with 1, 4, and 6, with 1 to look at alternatives in the best discretion of the city engineer with her big brain. Big engineering brain, I think, is quoting Commissioner Macy. Big engineering brain, I think, was pretty close to the quote. Okay. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Oh. Wow, my ears are old, and you guys didn't speak loud enough. Can I see a sign of the noes? 3. Unless Commissioner Hunt. Okay. It's like a barnyard auction. She just moved a little bit. Okay. Looks like the motion approved.
That's why these meetings are so long.
All right. So that moves us on to... Wait, did we get everything in that memorandum? Is there just one set of motions, right? That one motion covers it.
Yes, I just want to make sure is my contract modification, the costs that are in the memo for locations 1, 4, and 6 would be the contract modification applied to that contractor, and I will submit the purchase order accordingly. because that's what I think I understood from this discussion.
With your big engineering brain.
I mean, it's super clear.
All right, thank you very much.
When she comes to us.
All right, strategic plan 2022 to 2025 update. I see Ms. Barkman.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This evening, what I have for you is just a real quick update on the strategic plan. So if you have been on the commission for a while, like many of you have, you may remember that you used to kind of get an annual or maybe a biannual update. There was a couple sentences and a chart, and it really only went to the commission and didn't appear to get a lot of public communication. So as you all know, last year we moved to a multi-year plan, and which was actually approved about a year ago. So reaching that first year annual kind of mark, which is exciting. And we heard from you guys that you guys wanted to hear a little bit more frequently updates, and you wanted it to be more public facing. And so what we've provided for you in the memo is a link to the OpenGov version of this, where you can see kind of how it shows up for the public. This is as a result of our partnership with OpenGov, and staff has been busy implementing this with the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, Aging in Place, and Strategic Plan. You also earlier saw the budget book, the online budget book, which is new, and that is also done through OpenGov to kind of give you a little bit of idea of how we're using it and the different abilities. So this platform is exciting because it really does focus a little bit more on storytelling. So we're really trying to kind of flush out what some of the working steps are, what it means for the community, trying to break down some more of the technical language that staff uses every day that you guys may be familiar with, but our residents aren't always familiar with. And it allows us to be able to add pictures and video. We're looking at how can we integrate data into the plan, and looking at what data our departments do have and how does that potentially fit in. So that's kind of where we are with the strategic plan. I'm not going to go through it point by point this evening. It's there for you all to review. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to Mr. Brake or myself, and we'll track down answers for you if it's about a specific department. But because this is new, it's a new format, we're kind of lovingly calling it version 2.0. It's got this new format, it's got a lot of new capabilities. We wanted to bring it up for you this evening as a part of the regular agenda. As we move forward and kind of bake into our routine processes, the quarterly updates, it just, here's the update, would go probably more under the consent agenda with file and receive, and not really produce an agenda item. Where we would see an agenda item is, if you recall in the original PDF, we asked staff to identify what year they thought we might start a strategic plan goal or action step. And as you would imagine, many of those goals had 2022, 2023. There were some for 2024 and not a whole lot for 2025. So we're looking at how do we update those. If new action steps are needed, we would be able to use these quarterly opportunities as an opportunity to amend that, which would then be a regular agenda item. So that's kind of where we're headed a little bit with kind of process-wise. What you might see in your next July update is hopefully more videos. There's one in there for the Parks Passport, so thank you for Judy for doing that and letting us test that out. Again, pulling in more data and starting to help departments understand the data capabilities of this platform and how they might utilize that to share that information publicly. And you would see that next update in the second meeting in July, and then hopefully Aging in Place and Sustainability and Climate Action Plan will be available in early May, so in a couple of weeks, and that we would just provide to you via as an email update. And then we'll kind of do some communication with the public around all three of these plans are now available. They're fully searchable with our Aging in Place in mind. It is no more than 4 clicks from the home page of each plan all the way down to the lowest action step that you can take. So It's very easy to navigate, and we're always open to feedback on that as well. If there's no questions on kind of where we're headed with this, this is an action item only. There is no decision to make this evening.
Questions? Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do appreciate that we went to Open Gov, this platform, and this is something that we've talked about for quite a while here. One thing I am wondering though is that when we looked at the platform, Mr. Bragg, we were looking at action items and how we've progressed on the action items. And while I do see the action items here, how can we get an update on how we've progressed on those over the last year? Because I know you and your team have been working hard on those, and I'm sure it was a bear just to get these all uploaded into this beautifully stunning visual format, right? I mean, this is a great avenue of transparency. I guess at what point would we see how we're achieving those?
So you're asking me what is the timeline of?
Well, we used to get like a red, yellow, green chart, like an Excel file. So I guess this question is, where's the red, yellow, green? Like, how do we, like, just so that transparency goes to where exactly we're at, like either quarterly or something like that?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. We're still learning OpenGov. This is something we're building that airplane, as we like to say, as we're flying it. And so with these 3 plans in particular, that's something that you'll probably start to see those enhancements each quarter. Yeah. So that may be something that I can look at for the next quarter and how to maybe more visually chart out that progress. For now, there are some action items that are noted as completed. The action step gives you the title, and then it gives you a little narrative spot. And we've noted what is completed there is completed.
So I guess using the airplane analogy, can you give us like the paper airplane you guys used to have and like throw us the PDF of the action steps that we have and what the completions are? Because I'm sure that's being tracked somewhere.
Yeah, so our hope is to really be able to do everything in OpenGov. And so we have to look at how to transfer what you're asking into practice and what that looks like in this new system. And that's something we can look at for the next quarter.
Thank you. Will Commissioner Douglas and Commissioner Dubak.
Yes, in support of Commissioner Colo's request, I have said on a number of occasions that there are many elements of this plan that you can't quantify or that you just say done. But I would continue to want to have us identify a few indicators that are quantifiable and get quantifiable results on those indicators. If those indicators are, and I'm making this up, but it's a serious idea, customer satisfaction with public-facing entities, scoring those interactions, for example, would be one example of things that I would like to see us measuring on a regular basis so we have a bench line and can track our progress.
And I think that's something through the data part, we can look at how we build that in. This offers us the ability to build out a lot of different charts and graphs. So we can, like lead service line is one that I talked about a little bit. We haven't quite looked at how to format it yet, but lead service line replacement is, I think, actually in all 3 plans. And we can show this is how many we think we need to replace. This is the curve on how we're doing on replacing this. This is how many we did this year, last year, the year before. This is how many we're projecting for next year, and so on and so forth. And kind of really be able to articulate those numbers in a way we have not in the past.
Sure, Dubak.
I love this format. I think it's great, and I'm not sure if folks just need to spend more time with it. There's a lot of substantive information here about progress that's been made. Mm-hmm. It's not just the top line. There's narrative about what we've done and actual concrete results. 600 texts from 997 people on Text.my.gov and 20,000 plus new subscribers to the library newsletter. That was an objective. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, it's not in that spreadsheet format. I actually find this much more engaging and informative, the narrative format with the numbers with it. I mean, I appreciate folks like want the at-a-glance reading, but I think this, from a resident's perspective especially, is a really valuable tool. I think this is really well done.
Thank you.
And we can look at how to kind of keep blending that in with more and more data. I know with Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, for example, we're looking at how do we kind of build that snapshot data of like how our greenhouse gas emissions are doing, what the city's electricity usage. Like those are numbers that are easier to plug in to some data graphs and be able to build into the plan. So we could look at, you know, here's your top, here's kind of your general bullet points of progress on that home page for somebody who's really just looking for some high level pieces.
Well, I had a suggestion, but it's bad. I was going to say, you know, in the comment and status, you could just hyperlink to those write-ups. You know what I mean? So you only have to do the write-ups, and then it would always hyperlink there. But you wouldn't get that at-a-glance view. But I kind of agree with Commissioner Dubak. Like, most people aren't like, where are we with all of our strategic... It's like, okay, I'm really curious where we're at with EV chargers. Let's take a look. I'm really curious where we're at with lead lines. Let me find it. So, yeah, I mean, we don't want to create extra work, but it is important maybe to have at least some... like at least the ones that are completed, you know, like a little red, yellow, green, but you said like next quarter we might be able to get something like that. But you guys are regular, as there's milestones met and major things, you're updating the other elements, right?
Yeah, so we're working with, so for each of the plans, the process will be that I will go to the departments, ask for their updates, work to provide it through this system. We'll also kind of watch for things as they come through. So like the tree planting, for example, that's one where we had 500 trees last year. We're doing another 500 trees. We got another 500 trees in the fall. And so there are definitely some items that don't really lend themselves to a completed check mark. Like, more trees are better, so it's not always...
And if you overachieve, you know, we hit the SCAP, get 40%, or are we going to stop? Nope.
Yeah.
We're going to keep going.
So.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? How, I mean, what's our plan to engage the public so they know that this is out there, and that if they have, because we do often get questions like, well, what are you doing with this? You know, and it's like, this will be nice for me to be like, here's a link.
Yeah, so we we're going to work on the communication side of things to provide updates to the community, to let them know it's available through all of our different social media channels and newsletters and everything like that. And we can certainly provide a kind of quick and easy one for the commissioners, so that if you get that question, I think Judy actually already has it set up as romy.gov/goals, that would go to this directly to that strategic planning page. But we can definitely provide some basic talking points to the commissioner office.
And are we in the area, when you benchmark, I don't know if you did, as far as using this transparency model, are we cutting edge, so to speak, compared to a lot of local communities in the area when it comes to presenting our plan like this?
It's hard to say exactly, because I think there are a lot of cities using different platforms. And as I've been here, I'm still learning a lot about cities around us. But OpenGov does a great job across the country of helping communities provide transparency, especially around their budget and strategic plans. You know, in looking at other people's strategic plans, I like the direction we're heading. I like that our plans are actually translated very easily and very well to this platform. Whereas I think a few other communities are struggling to kind of figure out that fit piece, but this really gives us a lot of ability that we didn't have before.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Parkman. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good evening.
All right. This brings us to item 12, approval of amendment to incorporate new section fire prevention ordinance, chapter 340-2, first reading. I imagine, is that Mr. Leal, Mr. Brake, or?
Well, I can take a stab at it. So we have two complementary changes to the fire prevention ordinance, one having to do with new structures, and this is giving the ability to incorporate a reinspection fee, which in both instances it's at $100 an hour for someone coming out. It's absent having such a fee, it's just, the re-inspections could occur multiple times before things are reached satisfactorily. So this is the recommendation from the fire chief. The first one pertains to new structures and the new construction, that if there's reinspection, that there is a fee associated with that that specifically refers back to the fire code. And there is a sample resolution that is presented for your consideration.
We'll go with Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval, I will move approval of this resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Perush. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion. Commissioner Macy, did you?
No, I was going to move.
Commissioner Colo?
I actually do have a question. You know, I know we have in our building code, if someone disagrees with a determination, that they can appeal it. Do we have that, is that in the fire code? Is that something that we see in the fire code?
So pertaining to new construction, I guess my opinion that it would be yes, that it would include in there, but on the reinspection of existing structures, I don't know if they would have that relief mechanism.
Okay. And that, I guess, would be the next one that we're looking at.
Correct, and that's why they're presented to you separately. But if there's an interpretation of the code, that's where the code enforcement or code board of appeals, assuming that it's within their jurisdiction, but many times that you're talking about, say like a sprinkler system and you know what the capacity is and where this is arranged, I would see that as something that would be within the purview of the building board construction of appeals.
Okay, thank you.
In new construction, is anything like enhancements to the building as well? Like if you're adding an addition, or is it like what is that determination for? Let's say you were putting an outdoor patio in, and then you got someone that said you failed because you didn't have sprinkler systems in the inside of your building.
Unfortunately, you're asking the wrong person.
Okay.
You're getting very much into the.
But however
the
we
weeds.
define new construction, this would apply, and then everything else would be.
That is correct.
Okay.
So we are delineating a new section that pertains to new construction. So that could be a rehabilitation of a new building. Certainly.
Depending on the square footage and all that stuff.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
If you're stripping it down to the studs and building it back out. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Douglas?
I'll move approval.
It's been moved.
Yeah, you already have one.
Yeah, it's already a motion on the table.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Yep,
For the
we
second
have a
one?
second.
No, we haven't voted though on the first.
We haven't voted yet.
Oh, okay.
All right, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right.
Okay, so.
Wait, I have a motion I'd like to make.
Oh, I'm going to go with Commissioner Douglas on number 13.
Yeah, move approval.
Point of order.
We have a motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? A second by Commissioner Perush. Same sort of thing, but different context. Any questions? Okay, with now I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Okay, we're postponed 14, which gives us to 15, authorization to issue request for proposal development review.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. What I have described here is that I am recommending that we hire a consultant firm to look at process improvement and specifically the development review process. This may verify that certain procedures and ways that we handle things are done correctly. There could also be opportunities for improvement, and that we, through recommendations coming from the firm, may come up with technology needs that could measure whether it's customer satisfaction or technology that's used by the inspectors. There could be any number of things that come out. Additionally, what is currently on the respective websites for planning and building it does not give any information to a particular developer on specifics where someone who wants to have a time certain that from application to completion, what does that entail and the steps that are involved in this. So the other half of this is working with our communications consultant to have a robust information that's included on the web page that's on there. So again, looking at process improvement, and this is what I've explained to staff, because this is what I initiated based on previous budget discussion, in my opinion, is the best way of going about this, is that we look at management process professionals. We're not hiring building officials to look at the process, but rather from a process improvement, how can we make this a smoother step by step, and that we enumerate that in the beginning as opposed to advising people midway through the process. So at the same time, I very carefully explain this, that we have individuals that have worked in this field for a long time, and it's not to be critical of the staff that we have, but really looking at how can we build a better system. And so there is a model of another neighboring community, and I've worked with the end result of that consultant's recommendation. This is back in my brief private sector days when I worked in building services, and so have seen the successful application of that, of deploying the recommendations that came from the consultant. So my intent is to seek these proposals, allow the key leadership staff to participate in the selection of the firm, make that recommendation. My hoping that the timeline is pretty aggressive and may need to adjust that to allow sufficient time, but to conduct a number of interviews of the employees at work, also consumers of the system that can give input on this, where we can help improve the system. As I indicated with the statistics, this is a busy department. We have a lot of people that come in and a lot of activity, and how can we improve this? And so the anecdotal information that we hear of people that specifically avoid the city because these processes are too confusing, too long, whatever the case may be, will hopefully diminish that over time. So this is a commitment to quality improvement, and I'm optimistic that we'll have a good product that will come out of this. And so I've had some initial conversations with prospective bidders, but there's no predetermined that one particular firm would be best suited, but there are national consulting firms that do this type of work, and this will spur on additional improvements of potential, like I said, software improvements or other technology. So where are these monies coming out of? Number one, they're budgeted. Number two, that they're coming out of the state construction fund. So it's not an issue. This is not coming from the general fund, but this is coming out of the fund that's the self-contained operation that's funds the building division primarily. So this is the recommendation that I have. Hopefully, what I've described and the essence of the RFP document. It's like about a 20-page document, but this is really the essence of it, of what is entailed in the study that's included as an attachment to this report.
Can you explain a little bit about, to do this is to identify the frustrations, right? So what's going right, what's going wrong? And within this, is the consultant expected to randomly sample over the last few years people that have done business with the city in different capacities, whether you're pulling a permit for a deck, a swimming pool, or a $10 million building? We can kind of randomly sample independent without, what I mean, just to say, hey, what did you do, what could be improved, and what is your benchmark city that you've operated in before? And then also see if we can do the same thing with those benchmark cities, just to see, is it opinion or they are doing something different. I imagine that sort of research and calibration, because we have unique things here in Royal Oak than, Oakland Township, right? It's a different
animal up there, what they're building, how they're building, when they're building. Is that part of this, do you believe? Because I'd really like to understand, like have that level, and I'd love to have that before, and then after we do this, be able to measure against that to say, look, this is what the attitudes and feelings were before, and now that we've implemented these changes and recommendations, this is what the outcome is on those measurements.
Like with the red, yellow, green?
So looking at best practices in the industry, absolutely. Whether or not other communities have those quantifiable measurements, I don't know. But I would agree with you. What separates us, for instance, real obvious between here and Oakland Township, there you're developing in greenfields.
Right.
Here, everything is an infill development. So comparable communities that have that level of activity of infill redevelopment, and especially not only where you can quantify into measurable terms is days. Meaning, what is the time period it takes from application to when you get a completed occupancy permit? Now, part of the variable that is outside of our control is that if information is provided to the applicant and they don't follow it, then yes, you will be looking at delays. But otherwise, someone who follows along and takes whatever changes that are identified through the building plan review that need to be made in order to complete this per code, and that there is a predictable timeline. What was the outcome? What can I be assured that when I will receive the final approval, if construction goes as planned, when can I move in the building? And that's the common issue that we find.
Well, yeah, we also have like reinspection, which is sometimes because of the developer and sometimes because we miss things, and that's not a good situation to be in. And I don't know is that a 1% problem or is that a 75% problem? And so that's why I think that baseline would be really interesting to see, culminated in people's perceptions, that's all.
If that's information that can be collected. But you also bring up an entirely different issue that with a residential homeowner that's just looking at making a simple sort of, do I need to pull a permit for a deck? And we should be able to provide some very basic information in that regard for someone that perhaps is doing that type of work and they want to comply with it, and what are the requirements, and so outline those procedures. So those are kind of a couple of anecdotal sort of questions that are out there, and we hope to answer that. But I want to move forward with the study, and I'll come back to you with a recommendation of a selected firm and the reason why, and move forward with this. So,
Commissioner Macy.
Just building on the mayor's question a little bit. So I see that you're going to bring us a recommendation of the firm. I would hope we would see at least the top 3 proposals, as we typically do in our packets. Not just the one who's chosen. We normally see all the ones who are probably interviewed or have been selected. And part of the reason is because what the mayor was just saying is that some firms may do pieces that we think, oh, actually we want to add that to this too. And so it's helpful for us to see all of the proposals, or at least the ones that were seriously considered, rather than just the single one that was selected at the end. So I hope to see that in the packet.
Anybody else? Commissioner Hunt.
Just to be clear, the consultant that you're seeking, is this more for study purposes or for implementing the processes purposes? Are you just trying to figure out what the issues are and how they can best be corrected, and based on other cities and other communities, how these processes, these processes can best be implemented, or are you looking for someone that is actually implementing these? I just want to make sure that I'm clear with that.
Well, they would not be assisting us in the implementation, but they would identify what improvements need to be made. And so, again, I know of one example, but it was a very detailed report, and they had very specific recommendations that said, like, for instance, you need better signage, and this was in a community that had an older city hall. So So this won't be a theoretical concept. This will have pretty tangible sort of specific recommendations that will be in there, so.
So you say yourself that the department is full of, experienced individuals,
Yes.
and you yourself have worked in communities where, you've gathered this type of knowledge in the past. Has there been some sort of internal review rather than going out, finding a consultant and paying that consultant, some sort of internal dialogue or information gathering?
I have attempted that, and so that's where I'm looking at an outside facilitator. If I could clear my calendar, I would do it myself, but I don't have enough time in the day, and I think, and that's where I want some buy-in from the department, so that's where, I need their help in selecting the firm, so. Yeah, this is a recommendation that I'm making, and it had some examples, and not only of this experience, but through the professional association I belong to, is that other communities from very large to more our size have done a similar type of, revamping their processes and doing this successfully.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a great idea. Organizations from time to time need to kind of take a step back. I think an outside perspective on what we're doing well and maybe what we can improve upon is beneficial for the organization and then for the residents. And this is coming, it's being funded through fines and fees that have been collected for residential and commercial construction, a fund that is very well situated to provide for this. So with that, I move approval.
Motion by Commissioner Colo. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Douglas. Yeah, I'll just add, I think overall, it's a really good approach. I think we'll get some tangible improvements. And I may sound like a jerk right now, but without that baseline, I think when it comes back with the bids, I really want to see what the baseline is with a professional, even if it's part of this, they subcontract to get a sampling of over the last 3 years, a mix of different types of projects, residential, whatever, try to get as many people as they can to answer just a few questions, about what their issues were, what their, because I think that helps shape. We're not trying to fix the building department's problems, for example. We're trying to fix the people that are using the building department's problems. And if they're having issues, it's a good indicator for us to, and when I originally proposed this in the budget last year, that was my main effort, was to understand and do, and I say, hey, are we doing great? Or is there an opportunity for improve? These guys are coming in, I appreciate it. There's probably a lot of things tactically we can do to improve, but what matters mostly to me are the people that are using this service and getting that baseline in place and say, okay, these are the recommendations that we put forward and they're going to solve these things for these folks.
Okay. With that being said, I'm likely to bring a subcontractor, because what this is sounding to me is a lot like what Cobalt, what the type of work that they do, and we may not find that type of capacity in again, keep in mind, I go back to my original saying that I'm looking at process improvement. Sure. Whereas what you're describing, I'm kind of thinking of Ms. Davidson and I have worked on these survey sort of instruments, and she's provided me other examples, and that's right up their alley. So I probably will split that out. Yeah. I understand what you're saying, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Right. So, and if we don't have that understanding of what that level of satisfaction is or whatever, I think there's a way that we can come up with that would be pretty effective. I mean, that's that person's bailiwick. Whereas to get a consulting firm that would have both elements, I don't know if I can.
No, and that's why I said subcontract, but I think that Cobalt study could be done very quickly and it could inform, and I think we have to be precise on those questions. I think the questions need to come from, maybe even get the help of the chamber or some folks there on the DDA or whoever, deals, just get some hints at what we should be looking for. And I know we have a historical list of things that people have been unsatisfied with, and I think that's good to go with Cobalt or somebody like them, bid it out and use it to inform this. Because I'll tell you, I've, over my 20 plus years in the professional world, we've had consultants in that time come in, and I've been in presentations and they've said things, and I'm like,
well, where did you get this? And they explain and, you know, best practices, all this. I'm like, but in no way did my customers ever mention any of this whatsoever. And I think this is not, you know, worth our effort. And it makes it really hard if you're not listening to your customer. And I think that's the basis of it. We want to listen to our customer, get their feedback, and then make the changes that make their life easier.
Yep, understood.
We'll go Commissioner Douglas and Commissioner Prush.
Earlier tonight, I talked about measuring customer-facing service departments, and this is a big one. So I absolutely agree with the mayor's desire to measure levels of satisfaction with our services before and after. And I will report or point out that the RFP says that the effort should create insight into customer, employee, vendor, and other stakeholders' level of satisfaction with services. So it's baked into the RFP.
Commissioner Prush?
I'll just add real quickly that I think the timing of this is a really good measure of how important it is. Over the past, I don't know when it started, when did we start planning for this whole Civic Center project? 2015, 2014? And then it seems like ever since then, we've been going at warp speed to get the building put together. One of the goals in putting this building together the way it was with the design was to consolidate the location of a lot of these departments so that you didn't have to go from the third floor to the basement to the second floor to the first floor to get all of the various permits that you needed for a big project. So this is one step in that process. And then there has been so much building, not only of the Civic Center project, but also other major building projects over the past couple of years that have taken so much time and effort from this department or these department areas, like that whole Woodward Corners project, all of those individual buildings that had to be inspected and re-inspected by electrical and plumbing and building. And now the new Beaumont building that is going up there, the hotel, that building project hasn't really stopped. So I think now we're at a point where we can, plus all the houses, the new houses and the modifications to housing as well as new houses themselves. I think now we're at a point where we can kind of just catch our breath for a second and actually say, okay, the building department and division has pretty much functioned the same way for the past 30 years. Perhaps it's now time to take a look at how we can improve its function so that we can continue in such a great way over the next 30 years. So I think this is a good time. We can kind of pause, catch our breath. We got a lot of stuff done under our belt in this regard, but there are certainly improvements that can be made, and this is a good time to do it. So I think this is a good way to start the project off.
Amen. All right, anybody else? All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, this brings us to the approval of requests for proposal executive search firm.
Okay, that's back end to me. So I'm recommending that we bid out the executive search services to replace Mr. Leal, who has submitted that he's moving on to a new professional opportunity, and start this process. I will say, unrelated to this, of talking about the services that are provided by the legal department at a subsequent meeting, making some recommendations for continuity of services as the clock is now ticking, that we're less than 2 months away, and what the next phase is, and some recommendations that'll come jointly from myself and Mr. Leal. But the first step in the process is to get those proposals from executive search firms. We have an RFP that was done that all of you assembled and bringing me here. That was more than 3 years ago. So it's now time to go out into the market and to seek those proposals to fill the position. So this is the recommendation that I'm making to you, and happy to answer any questions or if there's anything that's applicable to related to the transition. This isn't on the agenda, but I just wanted to fill you in of what to look for in subsequent meetings. So,
Commissioner Douglas.
Is this the same, how has this changed, if at all, from the RFP we used a few years ago?
It hasn't. It's the same document. We're taking out manager and putting in attorney. So, but things that, let me back that up, because there was very specific language in there that dealt with the, you know, the role of this position. It would have, obviously, it would be applicable to that office. So.
Okay, cool,
yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Is that a motion?
Commissioner Macy?
Move approval?
We have a motion by Commissioner Macy, second by Commissioner Douglas. Go down this way a little bit. All right, discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right, that brings us to the last part of our agenda, which is to adjourn to closed session. Is there a motion to adjourn to closed session?
Mayor, there is no closed session. The caption is not worded correctly. And I think it would be better that if I were to, what I was wanting to propose as far as city manager, Mr. Brake has already alluded to, is the plan for continuity, next steps in the office, and other office procedures going forward. And that was the, and along with some other information. So I think I could put that in a legal status report instead.
Okay, so the request is not to move to closed session, but to adjourn.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So is there a motion to adjourn? Or wait, okay, since we had a motion in a second. Did we not? Okay, that was a previous one then. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Dubak. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Macy. People are excited to go into closed session, but just to end the meeting, gosh, got to beg for hands. All right, I'll call for the vote.
It wasn't me.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Adjourned.
I didn't say aye. Aye.